quintessentially, that worked with some of the private banks. It was similar to that. I was inspired by my time in Harrods, working with some of these ultra high net worth clients. So I just wrote a 40-page business plan like we all have to do. But I didn't make it to the interview, so I didn't get to talk about it. But no, it was a great experience, a very tough experience, but unforgettable.
So at a young age, how did that change your life at that age? Because you must have got starting to be recognised when you're going out and about town.
Yeah, I mean, it happened quite quickly because the adverts start rolling out on BBC One, and then the shows go on air. It's once a week on a Wednesday. You're getting about 7 million people tuning in every week.
Yep.
And yeah, it was surreal. It was surreal. And then suddenly you get invitations to things. You're going to premieres, and it was a lot. It was a lot at a young age, and I obviously had no training for any of that. But I just embraced it, and I've had fun with it.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Morning, 9:30 on Tuesday, the 7th of January 2025, live across the UK. Britain's Newsroom with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
Good morning. So Starmer fights back against Elon Musk's criticism over the government's handling of the grooming gangs scandal. Meanwhile, this is how the Prime Minister described anyone calling for an inquiry.
Politicians who sat in government for many years, calling for inquiries because they want to jump on a bandwagon of the far right.
So then the Home Secretary tried to calm the storm by announcing tougher sentences for groomers. Too little, too late?
Home Secretary Yvette Cooper announces child groomers will get tougher prison sentences, but still no inquiry.
It is never an excuse to use race and ethnicity or community relations as an excuse not to investigate and punish sex offenders.
Survivor anger across the country as the government brands jumping on the bandwagon of the far right in a call for a public national inquiry. Also, a Blue Labour group has broken from the government's position to call for that independent investigation.
And the chairman of Reform UK, Zia Youssef, joined us on the show this morning. Is his party rattled after the tech billionaire Elon Musk said Nigel Farage isn't the leader they need?
And floods, snow and ice. There are 200 weather warnings in place this morning as the north is battered by snow and ice, with flooding mainly in the south. Hundreds of schools have been closed. This is probably the first day back. Have you been impacted? Let us know.
And if you're overweight or a smoker, get to the back of the queue for NHS surgery, as that's how the government is going to try and clear the backlog.
And people who create sexually explicit fake images will be jailed for 2 years as the government clamps down on what are called deep fakes. More on that to come.
Is it just me? Why are all these schools closed?
Apparently we can't get to school anymore if there's a little bit of snow. Like, look, we're in London. It was cold this morning, but you've already done 4 trips on a motorbike.
Yeah. And it's fine, and the roads are virtually deserted.
To be clear, he's not a Hell's Angel in his spare time. That's how he gets to and from his other jobs.
Is there any excuse to not come into work? But why are all these schools closed? First day back at school, mums and dads now got a real headache, haven't they?
It's a nightmare.
The schools are closed.
Maybe we're just being London lucky, London-centric. Maybe we don't know how bad it is out there. Will you send us your photos this morning? gbnews@gbnews.com. Email us. And if you've got the kids at home and you all sat there in your pyjamas, send us your pictures this morning. Send us pictures watching GB News. And, you know, so kids will be delighted not being back at school.
Yeah, but also, Mum, Dad, tell us if you're fed up with your school for not opening.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, a lot to get through this morning. Zia Youssef from Reform as well. That is going to be very, very interesting. First, the very latest news with Katie Bowen.
Bev, Andrew, thank you and good morning. It's just gone 9:33. These are your latest headlines from the GB Newsroom. Professor Alexis Jay, who chaired the independent inquiry into child sex abuse, has said this morning that people should just get on with implementing the recommendations made in previous inquiries rather than holding another one. Professor Jay's comments come as the Prime Minister dismissed calls for a national inquiry yesterday, accusing the Conservatives of jumping on a bandwagon and amplifying what the far right is saying on child sexual abuse after failing to act for 14 long years. The Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, told the Commons yesterday that the government will make it an offence with professional and criminal sanctions to fail to report or cover up child sexual abuse. She added that the government will establish a victims and survivors panel to advise on wider work around the issue. That came as the Prime Minister defended his position as Director of Public Prosecutions, saying child sexual exploitation is utterly sickening, and it was something he had tackled head-on whilst in that role. Shadow Justice Secretary Robert Jenrick MP called once again for a full national public inquiry earlier on GB News.
I have long advocated whole life sentences for these grooming gang perpetrators, and I've said that if they're foreign national offenders, get them out of our country, deport them, no ifs, no buts, so they never step foot on this soil of our country again. And the cowardly public officials who did turn a blind eye, they should be prosecuted as well. Not a single one has been prosecuted so far, and that is completely wrong. We need to take action, and we need now to have a full national public inquiry.
Well, a Home Office spokesman issued the following statement. We are working at pace across government to drive forward real action to implement the recommendations of the independent inquiry into child sexual abuse. Severe snow and flooding is causing major disruption across the country this morning, with delays at airports, trains cancelled and A-roads closed. Liverpool John Lennon Airport remains closed right now for snow clearing, with flights expected to restart at 10 a.m. Bristol Airport reopened a short while ago after closures to runways overnight. Yesterday, a man's body was recovered from an area of flooding in North Yorkshire. Major incidents have also been declared in Leicestershire and Lincolnshire, and East Midlands Ambulance Service has declared a critical incident. A severe flood warning is in place near Barrow-upon-Soar, meaning there is danger to life and large-scale evacuation is required. River levels there are expected to remain high until tomorrow. A yellow snow and ice warning covering most of the southwest England and Wales, the West Midlands and the northwest of England remain in place until 10 a.m. this morning. The same warning is in place for western and northern parts of Scotland until midday and in Northern Ireland until 11 a.m. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now let's go back to Bev and Andrew.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Very good morning, 9:36 is Britain's Newsroom, live across the UK on GB News with me, Bev Turner, and Andrew Pearce.
Well, the weather is terrible in some parts of the country. Is it so terrible, though, that hundreds of schools have had to be closed today across the UK because of snow and ice overnight? We want to know if you've been impacted. Are you at home stuck with the kids? Or is it more likely Grandpa and Grandma are stepping into the breach?
This has been a long Christmas holiday, let me tell you. My kids are due to go back to school tomorrow, but a lot of schools have gone back today, or should have gone back today. And the disruption, you have to have a really good reason to close schools. And from what we can see, it doesn't look like it's that bad. We just lowered the bar so much now in terms of anything that becomes difficult to deal with, that we've got kids at home today. This is just the disruption this causes to their education, but also, as you say, Andrew, to the working life of parents.
Yeah.
But there's loads of grandparents at home who've been called in this morning. Granny, can you come and look after the kids?
This is the mindset. On the front page of the Telegraph today, train services were cancelled between Liverpool and London for several hours on Sunday after the ASLEF trade union, which, remember, got a 15% pay rise in 3 of their drivers, said to their drivers, you can't walk to the trains because there was snow on the platforms. A thin covering of 2 inches of snow on the walkways between trains, and the drivers were instructed by the union they should have their pay docked.
It just
they
feels...
should have their pay docked.
Yeah, they should. It just feels like any excuse to not go to work. And I'm sorry, but we got lazy in lockdowns and something mentally changed for a lot of people. They took that as the excuse. Well, if we can do it then, we can do it in the future. Any excuse just to not go to work, not go to school, sit at home.
As if the kids haven't lost enough schooling already.
Absolutely, it is. It's a
whole
joke.
Day at home.
But maybe where you are, it is really that bad. It's that treacherous. Will you send us your photos at gbviews@gbnews.com, email for photos, and then also go onto the gbnews.com/yoursay to have a little chit-chat to each other and also to us.
So the Prime Minister is under fire over his time as Director of Public Prosecutions after calling those people who want a national inquiry into grooming gangs, which we're calling on this station, or on this programme certainly, rape gangs, far right. That's what he said. Have a listen.
It is something about the nature of our politics, because once we lose the anchor that truth matters, in the robust debate we must have, then we're on a very slippery slope. And when politicians, and I mean politicians, who sat in government for many years, are casual about honesty, decency, truth and the rule of law, calling for inquiries because they want to jump on a bandwagon of the far right.
That was yesterday when Keir Starmer was talking about the NHS and he got asked a question on that. That was his opportunity to just categorically, outright condemn that rape abuse by predominantly Pakistani Muslim men in the northern towns of the UK. He didn't. Yet again, he started to talk about the people who were calling for an inquiry and just lazily writing everybody off as far right. Well, the Home Secretary, you said also yesterday that she's going to introduce harsher sentences for groomers, as well as announcing a new victims and survivors panel to advise ministers. Does that feel a little bit too little, too late?
Well, let's talk to GBNews reporter Charlie Peters, who started this all off with his revelations about what's been happening in Oldham. Charlie, morning to you. The noises that generated by your story last week continue, and the Prime Minister now, rightly in my view, in the dock for effectively deriding anybody who's saying there needs to be an inquiry as to what went on as people being propelled by the far right. Well, that's me, that's Bev.
Well, Andrew and Bev, this is day 7 of this story, but for many survivors, this is the 20th or 30th year of them waiting for action on this issue. They're so grateful that it has re-emerged in the national conversation, but the anger I heard yesterday from survivors in reaction to the Prime Minister's comments was unparalleled from anything I've heard from them over many years of reporting on this topic. The rage was clear, and I think they have every right to be angry after the association of the far right with a call for a national public inquiry. They said they're not jumping on a bandwagon. They are so happy that people are finally echoing their call, a call that they've been making for years, literally decades across this country. Now, we've had a few local reports, mostly in northern towns, one also in Telford. But many survivors and campaigners have pointed to the fact that this is a national scandal. This crisis stretches all the way from Bristol and Banbury and Aylesbury, all the way up, and Oxford as well, all the way up to Glasgow, where there have been very credible reports of on-street grooming gangs and also sufficient evidence of trafficking between many of these towns. Now, the government not only has it made that announcement yesterday of those 3 new measures they're going to bring in, that's the Home Secretary Yvette Cooper making that emergency statement in the House, but they're also sticking by this line that the independent inquiry to child sexual abuse in 2022 is all that we need. We've already had a national inquiry. But GBNews has pointed out that this scandal has covered at least 50 different towns and cities. The ICSA report only looked at 6 areas. None of the areas they assessed contained these grooming gangs. They checked in Warwickshire, but they did not check in a single northern mill town. That's why there is so much anger from survivors and campaigners I've been speaking to today. Some are saying that they need more local reports, but there is now momentum behind this call for a national public inquiry.
All right, Charlie, that's Charlie Peters, who broke this story here on GBNews 7 days ago. Let's talk to political commentator Sunil Sharma. Sunil Sharma, morning to you. The Prime Minister, if he was trying to turn this on its head, to try and he was trying to hit back at Elon Musk, he's just botched it again, hasn't he? Because what he's done is, in my view, he's insulted hundreds of thousands of people, probably millions actually, who are outraged by what happened to those white girls, raped predominantly by Pakistani heritage men, and don't feel there's been sufficient analysis of why it happened. And the fact is, people are saying it's still happening.
Yeah, for sure. It seems very similar to what he did following Southport riots, where he labelled anyone that was remotely worried about the impacts of mass migration as far right. He's done the exact same thing on this one, but I'd argue this one's even worse because I don't think there's anyone that could argue that what's happened is pretty sick and disgusting. And I think what's a real shame is he could have used it as a brilliant opportunity to really almost as a cause to unite the country. I think most people, regardless of right, left, would be in the view of that what's happened is sick and horrible, and now's an opportunity to correct some really, really bad mistakes. But I think that, there's a lot of talk on national inquiry, and I definitely think there should be a national inquiry, but I think a lot more needs to happen. A big problem with a lot of these national inquiries, they take a significant amount of time. They can, on average, it's around 2 years. I don't think 2 years is enough. It's too long, for some of these victims to get justice. It's too long for some of these people to stay roaming in the streets. So I think a national inquiry is needed, but a lot more in the short and immediate term needs to happen, because I sometimes with these national inquiries, and we saw it with the Grenfell Tower, how long that took, and some of those people, how long it took for them to get justice. So I don't think that should be applied with what's happened with the grooming gangs. And I think a much bigger thing is a review of the law as well. Somebody recently I saw got a prison sentence who was the leader of a 24-hour gang rape towards a 12-year-old child. He got 3 years in prison, and there's people in this country who are getting longer sentences for posting something on Facebook. So I think a general review of the legal system on this really needs to be looked at.
So Neil, I keep thinking in the last week, I'm wondering about the mindset of the police and the counsellors and the care home workers at the time when these offences were taking place, and why they were so frightened of upsetting the Muslim community. It's actually 10 years today since the Charlie Hebdo attack, if you remember, against the newspaper in France for publishing a cartoon of the Prophet Muhammad. There was fear at the time. There was fear in those days that the Muslim community might commit atrocities on anybody that complained. Has that changed, do you think?
I think maybe some of that is the fear, but I think it's also what's more socially almost the trendy thing to do at the moment. I think for a lot of people in these organizations, I think it gives them this sort of power or purpose to show that they're not Islamophobic. I think for them it's a badge of honor that they can wear amongst their peer groups, amongst their people, to show what great cause that they're doing by not being Islamophobic. And I think what they've actually ended up doing is not doing their jobs correctly. And I think that they've taken on these social roles. We saw a bit with some of the BLM stuff and some of the other groups. I think it's become a very trendy thing to do, and a way to show that you're better than other people is by not being Islamophobic, when really what they should be doing is just focus on doing your job. It doesn't matter if they're Islamic, Christian, Hindu, just do your job. There are some really sick people in this world from all races. There's clearly a cultural problem here. The stats support it, and I think it makes sense to really just do your job, basically. But I think a lot of these people have decided to take this on as a badge of honor and say, we're combating against Islamophobia. We're really good people. We're morally righteous, and therefore you bigots stay out of it. And I think it's a really dangerous way of behaving and acting.
The irony of that, hey? Political commentator Sunil Sharma there. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. A government spokesperson from the Home Office has issued this statement. They said no child should ever suffer sexual abuse or exploitation, and it is paramount we do more to protect vulnerable children, which is why we are working at pace across government to drive forward real action to implement the recommendations of the independent inquiry into child sexual abuse.
Still to come, we're delighted we're going to be talking to the Reform UK chairman, Zia Youssef, about the shenanigans that's been going on with Elon Musk and Nigel Farage. But first, you're in search of some winter sun. Certainly need it at the moment, don't we? Here's the forecast for some of our top European holiday destinations.
I hope it doesn't rain.
Don't worry about it.
It'll spoil our holiday.
Relax, we're totally covered.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
If you're on the hunt for some winter sun, I'm afraid it's often going to be cloudy, also with some rain. Largely dry across central areas, but it is going to be windy at times. Some cloud and rain moving into parts of Madeira and Lisbon, though largely dry across Tenerife and largely dry across central areas of the Mediterranean too. But as we move further east, more cloud for parts of Italy and also Greece, and this could be thick enough to produce some rain at times. More in the way of sunshine towards the end of the week, and temperatures widely in the mid to high teens.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Up next, find out why Labour have taken down this AI-generated video from their TikTok account. We showed it you yesterday.
We thought it was pathetic anyway.
It didn't last long, did it? Don't go anywhere. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
And the latest series of Big Brother has just wrapped up, and as always, the housemates managed to cause a stir.
Yeah, that's an understatement. After 5 weeks of drama and twists and turns, 6 housemates were left to battle it out for a £90,000 prize.
Well, our next guest was there to the bitter end, coming third in this year's competition.
6 weeks you were in there.
Oh, I tell you what, it was a long time.
What goes through your mind? Is it do you start to go a bit sort of what do they call it, cabin fever?
Yeah.
Do you go a bit nutty?
Like at times, not that I've ever been in prison, but I kind of likened it to being in jail, particularly when we were having to eat the porridge with water, no sugar, or that was difficult. And the feeling that you just can't leave. I mean, you can, but it was,
You can,
tough.
but you won't get your hands on that prize money.
No, exactly.
You made it to the end.
Yeah.
And it's quite a big house, isn't it?
Yes.
Do you feel as though you can get away from housemates if they're annoying you a bit, or does it feel like your hot house with
no,
people you don't
can.
like very much?
If you're sort of, if you're not comfortable with a certain conversation or something like that, you can always take yourself and move away. But can you have time to yourself? No. Not really. I mean, even you might think, do you know what, I'll just go and lock myself in the toilet for a few minutes. There's a camera and there's a mic in there, so you can't escape that. And then you're obviously wearing a mic, so there is that little feeling of, I could just do with having 5 minutes to myself, but you can't really get it.
You've met up with one side of the house, but not the other side yet. But is that still on the cards, do you think?
I hope so, yeah, because I liked every single person in that house, despite a few whispers on the internet, like, do you not like this? I liked everybody in the house, never had a bad word with anybody, so...
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
(9:51) Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Now, we do give Labour criticism all the time, but it seems they can't seem to get anything right. We did bring you this video from the government's official TikTok account yesterday. It was entitled Labour's Plan to Change Britain as Animals. We thought it was puerile, but take a listen.
So some beady-eared people looking on social media thought, hang on a minute, I know that song. I know the tune that they've used there. Now, it's in Portuguese, and it's called Montagem, and it's by a guy called DJ Hollander, which is the music bed that somebody in Labour chose. Now, there's very little that I can read to you of the actual lyrics of that song. But, for instance, it's go naughty young girl, relaxing, go something yourself, naughty shameless, sit on the something.
Yeah.
And then it goes on to say, call me forbidden because I get addicted quickly. Perfect combination is sex, beer and marijuana. The young girls are addicted. Everyone is enjoying the wave. At that peak, only angry chorus. It basically is describing a sex party with young girls.
Yeah, and when you consider, we're discussing, the great issue at the moment is the exploitation of young white girls by Asian heritage men. And the Labour Party releases a clever TikTok illustrated by music where the lyrics are about young girls being sexually exploited. Have they completely taken leave of their senses?
Nobody checks anything. There's no adults in the room, are there? The whole idea, when the Tories got kicked out, everyone said, oh, it's marvellous, there's adults in charge now. Clearly not.
So some clever clogs in Labour HQ thought this was so clever, they've had to withdraw it, and they've also now apologised.
The main line,
said,
which is...
The post is an adaptation of a viral social media trend and contains a mix of two music tracks. We acknowledge the translation of the lyrics are completely inappropriate. That's an understatement, Labour Party.
How can nobody
We
have checked that?
apologise and the video's been deleted.
And the line that's repeated repeatedly in the song is just a punch in the young girls, and I can't finish that sentence.
Delightful, isn't it?
There we are. Anything right.
This lot are running the country.
Right, still to come, is it right that obese patients and smokers are put to the back of the queue at the NHS after your weather?
Despite the morning rain, it'll be a nice, warm, cosy day ahead. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. It's going to be a cold start with frost and ice in places, also some snow showers which may lead to some disruption. Plenty of sunshine around, though it is going to be feeling cold. Plenty of showers feeding into northern and northwestern parts, these falling as snow, not just over hills but to lower levels too, particularly across Wales and at times central parts of England too. A chance this could lead to some disruption also. Away from these showers though, there'll be plenty of dry weather, plenty of sunshine, though it is going to be feeling cold. Highs only reaching around 6 to 7 Celsius across the south, but not really pushing much past 2 to 3 Celsius in northern areas. And with that added wind chill, that is going to make things feel even colder. Then to end the day across Scotland, we're still going to see plenty of these snow showers feeding in, likely adding to accumulations that we've already seen across northern parts of Scotland. Similar across Northern Ireland, northwestern parts of England, still seeing a good influx of these showers moving through, likely drier in the far east of northern parts of England. And similar across Wales, still seeing plenty of these snow showers, the driest and brightest of the weather likely across the very far southeast. But into the evening, we are still likely to see plenty of clear spells. So once again, another sharp frost and likely seeing further icy stretches by the time we reach the morning. And it's not going to be completely dry. We're still going to see a continuation of these showers, particularly moving into northwestern parts, still falling as snow. But many towns and cities widely dropping below zero, particularly in rural spots where it's likely to be especially cold. Then to start on Wednesday, we see more of the same. Once again, plenty of sunshine to start, though still seeing a feed of those snow showers into the northwest. And then a chance we could see some outbreaks of snow falling into southern counties too, though there is slightly lower confidence as to exactly whereabouts the snow will be, though there is a snow warning issued across the far south. And for many of us, once again, it is going to be a cold end to the day. That's it from me. Bye-bye for now.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. Flights are suspended at Aberdeen and Liverpool John Lennon airports because of snow in West Yorkshire on the A58M Inner Ring Road in Leeds. There's a lane closed eastbound where someone's broken down at the A58 West Street junction. It's taking around half an hour in queues from the Elland Road interchange. The A1 in Nottinghamshire's closed southbound from the Claypole turnoff to the Marston turnoff and northbound through Lincolnshire from the Melton Mowbray turnoff to Long Bennington because of flooding. In Suffolk, the A12 is blocked northbound by an accident off the A14 between Bucklesham and Brightwell, causing delays. In Newport, the A48 Southern Distributor Road's closed westbound from the Hartridge Farm roundabout to the Balfe Road roundabout after an accident causing queues. And on the M4 in Berkshire, 2 lanes are closed eastbound after an accident and spillage between junctions 13 and 12 from Newbury to Reading.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
£50,000 in tax-free cash is like having over £4,000 each month to play with for a whole year. And it could be yours in the biggest Great British giveaway so far. That could be a holiday each month, your mortgage covered, or just the ability to send some of those day-to-day financial stresses packing. For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, 10 o'clock on Tuesday, the 7th of January, 2025. I'm still getting used to saying that. Live across the UK, this is Britain's Newsroom with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
So Starmer's trying to bite back against the criticism over the government's handling of the grooming gang scandal, but I'm afraid this is how he described anyone who had the temerity to call for a new public inquiry.
Politicians who sat in government for many years, calling for inquiries because they want to jump on a bandwagon of the far right.
Home Secretary Yvette Cooper has announced that child groomers, as they're still calling them, will get tougher prison sentences, but still no public inquiry.
It is never an excuse to use race and ethnicity or community relations as an excuse not to investigate and punish sex offenders.
So how rattled are reform after the tech billionaire Elon Musk said Nigel Farage, frankly, isn't the man to lead the party? We're going to ask Reform's chairman, Zia Youssef, who joins us in the next hour.
And if you're overweight or a smoker, well, you can get to the back of the queue for NHS surgery now, as the government has pledged to clear the backlog. But is it just a clever way of manipulating the numbers?
Floods, snow and ice. Well, it is January after all. There are 200 weather warnings in place. The north has been battered by snow and ice, with flooding mainly in the south. And guess what? Literally hundreds of schools have closed across Britain.
One severe flood warning has been issued for Barrow upon saw, as for the first time, the East Midlands Ambulance Service declare a critical incident. We'll have the picture on the flooding from across the country.
Hang on a minute. Jack Carson was there where the schools are closed. It looks
flooded.
Literally like a sort of fairly dry day, not a breath of wind, no snow, no frost, no ice. Yes, there's some flooding, but honestly, what's happened to us?
Why don't we getting schools open should be an absolute priority of the ruling class.
Yeah, well, it wasn't, was it? 2020 onwards, 2 years open on and off, and maybe we're just in that mindset now. It doesn't matter. Kids' education doesn't really matter. The teachers sat at home with a biscuit and a cup of tea. Morning. Get in touch with us, gbnews.com.
And is it grandpa and grandma are having to step into the breach?
No doubt. We would love to hear from you this morning, and send us your photos of this awful weather wherever you are. It's gbviews@gbnews.com to email your pictures. First, though, the very latest news with Katie Bowen.
Bev, Andrew, thank you and good morning. It's 2 minutes past 10. These are your latest headlines from the GB Newsroom.
Professor Alexis Jay, who chaired the independent inquiry into child sex abuse, has said this morning that people should just get on with implementing the recommendations made in previous inquiries rather than holding another one. Professor Jay's comments come as the Prime Minister dismissed calls for a national inquiry yesterday, accusing the Conservatives of jumping on a bandwagon and amplifying what the far right is saying on child sexual abuse after failing to act for 14 long years. The Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, told the Commons yesterday that the government will make it an offence with professional and criminal sanctions to fail to report or cover up child sexual abuse. She added that the government will establish a victims and survivors panel to advise on wider work around the issue. That came as the Prime Minister defended his position as Director of Public Prosecutions, saying child sexual exploitation is utterly sickening and it was something he had tackled head-on in that role. Shadow Justice Secretary Robert Jenrick MP called once again for a full national public inquiry earlier on GB News.
I have long advocated whole life sentences for these grooming gang perpetrators, and I've said that if they're foreign national offenders, get them out of our country, deport them, no ifs, no buts, so they never step foot on this soil of our country again. And the cowardly public officials who did turn a blind eye, they should be prosecuted as well. Not a single one has been prosecuted so far, and that is completely wrong. We need to take action, and we need now to have a full national public inquiry.
While a Home Office spokesman issued the following statement: "We are working at pace across government to drive forward real action to implement the recommendations of the independent inquiry into child sexual abuse." Severe snow and flooding is causing major disruption across the country this morning, with delays at airports, trains cancelled and roads closed. Liverpool John Lennon Airport remains closed right now for snow clearing, with flights expected to restart at 10:30 a.m. Bristol Airport reopened a short while ago after closures to runways overnight. Yesterday, a man's body was recovered from an area of flooding in North Yorkshire. Major incidents have also been declared in Leicestershire and Lincolnshire, and East Midlands Ambulance Service has declared a critical incident. A severe flood warning is in place near Barrow upon Soar, meaning there is danger to life and large-scale evacuation is required. River levels there are expected to remain high until tomorrow. A yellow snow and ice warning covering most of the southwest England and Wales, the West Midlands and the northwest of England remain in place until 10 a.m. this morning. The same warning is in place for western and northern parts of Scotland until midday and in Northern Ireland until 11 a.m. Well, the bad weather isn't just here at home, as Storm Blair has killed 5 people in the US. More than 60 million Americans are facing weather warnings, and 7 states have declared emergencies, including Kansas and Missouri. Washington, D.C. is bracing itself for heavy snowfall. Forecasters believe the extreme weather is being caused by the polar vortex. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced his resignation yesterday after 9 years in power. The 53-year-old said at the press conference in Ottawa that he would stay on as both Prime Minister and leader of the Liberals until the party chooses a new chief. He also announced that Parliament would be prorogued until the 24th of March. Trudeau said that he was fighting internal battles in his party after he faced plummeting popularity at the polls. Today is the 10th anniversary of the Charlie Hebdo attack in Paris, where 12 people were killed and 11 were injured in its newsroom. The French satirical magazine has marked the anniversary with a special edition with the word indestructible appearing on the cover. Brothers Sharif and Saeed Kouachi stormed the offices of the magazine on the 7th of January 2015 in retaliation to the magazine printing cartoons of the Prophet Muhammad. The shootings marked the start of 3 days of terrorist attacks in Paris. Retail giant Next has said it is facing a £67 million surge in wage costs this year, adding it will be forced to raise prices by 1%. The retailer blamed Labour's budget after the government announced plans to increase employer national insurance contributions and the minimum wage from April. Next also warned of slowing sales growth in 2025. The warning comes after the crucial golden quarter for retailers in 2024 failed to give them the send-off they hoped for, with sales just 0.4% higher over the 3 months to December than in the same period in 2023. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. Let's go back to Bev and Andrew.
It's Newsroom live across the UK, the world, in fact, on GB News with me, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. It is the world.
All around the world.
Yeah, we have people messaging us from all over the world. gbnews.com/say, let us know where you are. And in fact, you've been doing that this morning because we asked you for some photos and you have kept them decent, which is good. You've emailed them to us. So this is a picture from Charles in Port Glenone in Northern Ireland, if I pronounced that right.
I would call it Port Glenone.
Port Glenone, sorry. Yeah, Northern Ireland. I wasn't sure it was coming from France, but I hadn't scrolled down far enough. Lovely, Charles, thank you. This is from Terry. This is snow in East Lancashire. I mean, it doesn't look great. It's worse than I thought it was going to.
Sure.
You know, it's very different here in London this morning. Neil says here is a picture taken this morning near Larne in Northern Ireland as well. Let's find that one. Where is Neil's?
Well,
I'm
not
sorry,
moving
we
the photograph.
quite got them in the right order.
There
we
is.
go.
Oh, that's very thick snow.
Yeah, that is thick snow. But you know what? In my day, as I said, sounding very old, we would still have gone to school.
Yeah,
My
we
mum
would.
would have got us in the car.
You got your wellies on.
You got your wellies on, you got your coat on, you got your gloves on with a string that's connecting
right.
them together so you didn't lose one.
And
You've got there.
we would walk to school in our Wellingtons and we would be told explicitly by my mum, don't throw snowballs, and of course you did. And your gloves were ruined and you had flipping...
Frozen fingers.
Frozen fingers when you got to school, and then you'd be shouted at by the teachers, but school went on.
You wonder why we've got a generation of kids who've got no resilience whatsoever because they never got a snowball in the back of their head on the way to school on a cold winter's day, did they?
It's called growing up.
Keep your photos coming, won't you? gbviews@gbnews.com. Email them. Just take them on your phone and whiz them to us on email because we'll have a look at them, as many as possible. And let us know as well, if you're at home, if you are one of these schools which is closed, why? Is it really necessary?
And how furious are you?
Yeah. Right, tech billionaire Elon Musk has been extremely outspoken on UK politics, calling out Sir Keir Starmer, saying that Nigel Farage isn't fit to lead reform.
And he's criticised at night. He's criticised the Prime Minister. He said that Jess Phillips, the safeguarding minister, should effectively be in prison for not wanting an inquiry. So we're asking you, does he represent your view? Should he butt out of British politics altogether?
Butt out isn't really a phrase you would use.
Not mine.
You didn't write that, did you? Right, let's talk to political commentator Jess Gill and journalist and author Rebecca Reid. Morning, ladies. Lovely to see you. Right, Rebecca, Elon Musk is a man who believes in free speech, and isn't he just exercising his right to free speech by getting involved in politics, no matter what country it is?
I mean, I suppose technically he can say whatever he wants, but I am very concerned by the idea that he would exert any influence in this country. And I think that the only good thing has been I've enjoyed the fights recently over his stance on Nigel Farage. It's been fun to see a bit of infighting and a bit of gossip, but actually I think the issue might resolve itself because I think Nigel is a very popular, well-liked politician. And I think Elon's misstep here might actually mean that people are less likely to listen to him. But I do think we should be across the idea of foreign billionaires being involved in our politics. It's not ideal. I wouldn't like it if it were anybody. I don't like Elon Musk personally, but I generally think as little foreign interference in our politics as possible is probably the ideal.
Rebecca, before we bring in Jess, can I just ask you, did you object then when Barack Obama told Britain that we'd be at the back of the queue if we voted for Brexit in terms of trade deals, because that caused huge resentment on in the Leave campaign?
I'm not sure that it was a particularly sensible thing for him to weigh in on. And I think similarly, the row about Labour staffers going over and helping with the American election and in the Democratic cause, this is not exclusive to Elon Musk. It's not exclusive to one side or the other. But I don't think we have to make everything a left versus right issue. I think we could probably try and have a grown-up conversation about which voices should be amplified in our debates and which shouldn't, without making it left versus right, and simply, do we want other countries to be involved or not?
Jess, what are your thoughts on this? Because obviously Elon Musk is very influential. He has a huge following. He's been tweeting and retweeting actually clips from GB News. He might be watching right now. Some of the Charlie Peters stuff on grooming gangs has been watched more than 10 million times thanks to Elon Musk. That's got to be a good thing.
Yeah, it's absolutely amazing. I mean, personally, I'm a free speech absolutist, and I dare to say that extends towards billionaires as well. I mean, Elon Musk isn't imposing his viewpoint on the general public like politicians do, like, dare I say, the BBC do, and other platforms that are funded and promoted by the state. No, he's letting people speak and have their own decision. And yes, there's not everything that I agree with Elon Musk on. Like, for example, I think Farage is actually a good leader, but I'm glad he said it, quite frankly, because it shows that he's a free thinker. It shows that he's not tied by anyone. And I think that's what we desperately need in British politics. We need somebody who is representative of the British people, talking about the issues that the British people care about, like the grooming gangs. The fact that Elon Musk is doing a better job than, I would say, most politicians, if not all politicians currently in Westminster, I think that speaks testament to the fact that he should be given a platform and he should be able to speak about these things.
But do you think he really does get it, Jess? Does he really know what's going on in this country? He's never lived here, he doesn't vote here, he's got technically he's got companies in this country, but he's not British, and some of his comments have shown, frankly, a rather staggering ignorance of the way things are done here.
Yeah, I think he is limited. As I said, I don't think anyone's perfect. But to be fair, like I said as well, he is representing the British public more than generally most prime ministers and most MPs in Westminster right now, because of the grooming gangs. I would say the grooming gangs, as somebody who was brought up near somewhere like Rochdale, where I recently visited, to get their voices, they're glad somebody's speaking out about it. A lot of people wouldn't come forward, but they will be glad people are speaking out about it and providing Twitter as a platform, or X as a platform, to allow people to have these meaningful conversations. It is doing God's work.
Rebecca is doing God's work.
There's an expression in journalism which I think we all have to try and say to each other every morning, which is Twitter isn't real life. Yeah. The majority of people in this country don't use Twitter. The majority of the people in this country have no idea what's happening on Twitter. And it's so easy as a journalist, and I think we all do it, to think that because it's the place we go in the morning to look for news, it's actually this huge seismic influential platform. And it's influential in the extreme fringes, both on the left and the right. But normal people do not go on Twitter most days.
But I think, but I don't think that's, what do you mean? What do you mean by normal people? If you've got something being watched, a GB News clip being watched 10 million times, some of them are going to be normal people.
Some of them absolutely are going to be normal people, but the majority of people who use Twitter, well, the majority of people don't use Twitter is my point. The majority of UK citizens either don't have an account or don't have an active account they use regularly. Twitter is a particularly popular platform with people who are very politically engaged, again, at either end of the spectrum. And being viewed 10 million times is obviously a lot, but in the grand scheme of the world, if you think about how many people see an episode of EastEnders, it's not actually a huge number in terms of influence. So while anybody speaking out about sexual abuse against women and girls is essential and important, I am concerned about somebody speaking out who owns the platform, who is not subject to any fact checking, and who is not necessarily going to be. So if I went on the internet and I accused somebody of being a rape sympathiser without any evidence, without any backing, I would be very vulnerable to be a victim of legal action. Unfortunately, the problem is that when somebody like Elon Musk is so powerful, he can say things which should be actionable, which are arguably not true and certainly unproven, without any recourse. And I find that very concerning about X as a website. But again, I go back to X is actually not as important as we think it is, because we're in the media, so we look at it all day, every day. Most people don't.
Jess?
Well, I would say the fact that people in the media are looking at it day by day is actually a proof that Twitter is important. Because, yeah, I am aware that the average mum with 3 kids isn't going on Twitter every morning. I'm aware that's not a part of her habits. But the fact that journalists are looking at this and important people in the media, it does trickle down, as we can see by this whole conversation around it. The BBC, all the mainstream headlines are quick to post what Elon Musk is posting, and other people around that, they're quick to post a quick story on that. So I think, again, it's a good thing. I was
just to say, ladies, every single front page of the British newspapers is because of a story that started, A, at GB News, and then B, on X. So I think the idea that Twitter isn't the real life and it isn't dictating the agenda is actually a pretty outdated, fortunately, I think, a pretty outdated assessment of the media landscape, Rebecca.
I think we have a tendency as journalists to think that things are more significant in people's daily conversation because we see so much of it on the internet. And I think the echo chambers are very dangerous. I definitely, when I come into GB News, hear a different perspective on what people care about from when I go into the BBC or from when I go into the pub with my friends. And I think it's really important just to remember that what each of us are seeing in our very insular communities online is not necessarily representative of the general public. And again, yes, it is currently on the front page, but similarly, there are front pages about celebrity culture that I have no idea about. These pages do not mean that everybody in the country is across it. And that's why this question about a national investigation is so important, because we need to unify and bring together all of these different factions and get everybody on the same page, rather than kicking around grooming gangs as a political football. Actually ask the question, this isn't about Twitter, this isn't about Elon Musk, this isn't about anybody other than preventing a single case of child sexual abuse ever happening again.
Yeah. And on that, we all agree. Rebecca Reid, Jess Gill, thank you so much for joining us. It's so important, isn't it, to remember the victims of these sex rape gangs.
And some of those girls never got their voice heard because they're from broken families, and they just weren't listened to.
And don't forget, we're talking also to Maggie Oliver this morning. As you know, you'll be very familiar with Maggie. I'm a massive fan of Maggie Oliver. She should be Dame Maggie Oliver, frankly, as far as I'm concerned. And maybe that will be coming in the, hopefully, closer.
Now, coming up, Britain's being battered by snow, ice and rain, 200 weather warnings in place, and inevitably road closures, travel cares, and hundreds of schools are closing. So
let's go to Jack Carson from Tenbury Wells, where it must be awful conditions there, Jack, if schools are closed and chaos has descended. How is it? Oh, it looks quite nice. There's a lovely blue sky, not a breath of wind.
It's a much brighter picture here. It's a much brighter picture here in Tenbury Wells this morning. Schools have been opened here when I got here just after 8 o'clock this morning, so things are a much brighter picture. But you might be able to see just behind me the sandbags that are here. That's because Tenbury Wells is notorious for flooding. In the last 4 years, they've had 7 floods here. It's really had a huge impact on local businesses, on local people. When you walk down the high street here, all you see are temporary flood defences, at the moment sandbags, because over the last couple of days, particularly with the yellow weather warnings that we've had here in the West Midlands, as well as over the weekend, those amber warnings for snow and ice, there has been some localised flooding within the West Midlands, within Worcestershire, Shropshire and wider into Coventry and Warwickshire as well. So the residents here have been prepared. The reason there are sandbags here is because the last 2 floods took away the wall here, so there has been some anticipation that things would get worse. Thankfully, they haven't, after there wasn't as much rainfall maybe as was expected last night. But across the Midlands, more widely in the East Midlands, it is a much different picture. Last night, the Environment Agency declaring a severe flood warning. That means a danger to life. A severe flood warning for the River Soar at the Caravan Parks near Barrow upon Soar. They've had emergency crews working there, evacuating people as well. And of course, that flooding continues to impact people across the country too.
OK, Jack, thank you so much. Jack Carson there in Tenbury with some sandbags.
Yeah, exactly. Need your sandbags. Up next, how do you feel if you put to the back of the queue for knee surgery because you're too fat or you smoke? That's the latest guidance from the NHS. You're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Nana Queer, weekends from 3 p.m.
Today I am joined by documentary maker Daniel Wing, who is still trying to find out who murdered his mother 30 years on. He's also created a documentary called Who Murdered You, Mum? Daniel, can you just tell us the story of what happened to your mother, what you know?
So when I was 1 year old in 1992, my mum, Tina, was murdered. My dad went on trial for it and was acquitted. And the case went unsolved and has been unsolved for 32 years. My nan, who raised me, amazing woman, passed away sadly 2 years ago, and that kind of sent me on a quest for answers.
So your documentary then, what are you hoping to achieve with it?
I am fighting for justice for my mum. I have had a meeting with the police and they are looking to see what they have and are looking to reopen investigation if they can find new and compelling evidence. What's interesting now is speaking to other families who are actually going through the trauma and experience of murder.
Yeah.
My mum didn't get the opportunity to be a mum. What would my life have been? I'm now 33 old with no parents, and it's that kind of thing. It's a very, I guess, lonely journey in what I'm experiencing. That's why I wanted to make this film, because I hadn't had the opportunity to be able to grieve my mother and know who she was, and that was really what this journey was about. It was about finding out who she was and being able to grieve. Everyone had the opportunity, although terrible circumstances, to be able to go to the funeral and have that moment, and I never had that opportunity.
The People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Both of you, you Claire Pearson, we should point out, is also
yes, and we were together for some years before that, and then we rushed off to Lapland on our own to get married.
Did you?
Yeah.
That's really lovely.
How many years have you been married, Piers? A long time.
45 years.
Very good.
Wow.
And you know the date?
I do. 7th of July, 1979.
Very good.
Amazing.
Very significant year.
In
Mrs.
Winchester
Thatcher won
College Chapel.
Very
There you
nice.
are.
And just a few months later, Mrs. Thatcher became Prime Minister.
Yep.
Significant year in 2 ways.
Congratulations.
And we should
Anyway,
put this
Nigel.
on the table.
Right, Piers. Starmer's far-right assessment of anybody who calls for an inquiry on the grooming gangs yesterday, it sort of took our breath away when he said that. We were covering that live.
Yeah.
And,
Yes.
and, you know, he did go on to say it is inexcusable and we need to call it out. He said all the usual platitudes. But to reach yet again for the far-right phrase as
It shows how rattled he is.
Yeah.
He's rattled, and he's also out of touch with reality. And it's quite clear that the British people are very alarmed at the scale that's now emerged of this appalling abuse of these young girls, and particularly. And
they were virtually children.
And of course there should be a national inquiry. You don't have to be far right to say that. Their victims are entitled to this. These are victims who are still suffering. It's long-term damage done to these vulnerable children, and it's horrific. And he really didn't make anything of that. And to lash out at the extreme right again, excuse me, the extreme right have got nothing to do with this. And it's only that, unfortunately, the Elon Musk bringing in the Tommy Robinson, which is completely irrelevant to this. What it is about is this horrific business. And also he's rattled, because if there was a national inquiry into this, a proper major inquiry, his time as DPP would come under scrutiny, and he doesn't want that, because he spends a lot of time portraying himself as the greatest prosecutor in the land. But in fact, he actually damned himself by saying that when he left, he had prosecuted more people for sexual abuse than in history. Now, that statistic alone tells you the scale of what was going on. So he's actually, in my view, cut his own throat. There should be a national inquiry also, because I think the public are very concerned that this is still going on.
Well, and we're talking to Maggie Oliver a bit later about that, and that's her point, that this is still going on, Nigel, and that is the big problem here.
That is the point.
That's the issue in this Pakistani heritage community that has not been dealt with.
Yeah, that's the point. That what we need to do, the absolute priority, is to protect children in the future. Now, if you hold an inquiry now on the back of the Jay inquiry, the recommendations that Jay suggested and the last government wouldn't do can't be put in place. So that inquiry lasted 7 years.
On that basis,
7 years for an inquiry. It is disgusting, isn't it?
And it only looked.
Well, she did do 15 investigations during that time, including Rotherham.
But it only looked at 6 or 7 towns, and GBNews has pointed out.
There are others, yeah. I'm not saying there shouldn't be an inquiry. I'm saying that let's get the priorities right. So the first thing is get the J recommendations sorted out. One of them came through from Yvette Cooper yesterday, which is anybody covering up child abuse would face a criminal prosecution. That was one of the J recommendations.
So that could be a social worker?
Yeah, that could be a social worker. That could be...
It could even be an NHS worker.
Exactly. It could be anybody, yeah.
And that law is going to be extremely difficult to interpret, by the way. And the way that Yvette Cooper rushed it out last night looked like a panic move by the government.
Because it was her panic response to his badly... I mean, that went off badly, I think.
Yeah, and however Starmer tries to present this, it does look more and more like he's trying to cover something up. And it's actually an example, another example of how out of touch Starmer is with what's going on in this country, and also how he's really, I'm afraid to say, the most disastrous Prime Minister this country has ever had.
He's not covering it up. The point, it's a matter of actually getting the rationale of all this. So if your priority is to protect children, what you want to do is get the existing recommendations imposed. They should have been 2 years ago. They weren't, but they're now being done now. Then, yes, in the event that we need to look more closely at the rape gangs, because that wasn't actually adequately covered, that's fine. Then do an inquiry. But if you do an inquiry into child abuse now, you can't very well put in these measures until that one is completed.
But what's this got to do with the far right, which is what Starmer was banging on about
I agree with you. I think there was a mistake for him to talk about the far right. Yeah. He is absolutely right that various politicians have been climbing on bandwagons, particularly Kemi Badenoch, on the basis that it was her government that didn't put these recommendations through in the first place.
I totally agree.
But the question that threw him at the end of that press conference was he said no to an inquiry because they take too long. Somebody pointed out, how many inquiries have we had in social care in this country? How many?
You know, I agree.
Major public inquiry.
They keep
having a Royal
inquiry.
Commission, a one-less inquiry, and we're having another inquiry which is going to take 3 years. You can't have it both ways.
And Keir Starmer did actually say he hadn't ruled it out. What he wants to do is get these recommendations through. He then said that there was a possibility of an inquiry later.
But we've got a review into the NHS. We've got a review into defence. We've got, I mean, that Starmer orders reviews every day almost because he won't take responsibility himself.
Well, a review is to get the evidence. I mean, you mentioned defence. There's no point, for instance, spending extra money on defence till you know what weapons you need.
Well, why are they then cutting
So you have a review.
They're cutting defence spending already.
You have a review into social care because we want to get it right. That several people have come up with it. Boris Johnson promised that social care would be solved.
It did not do enough on the rape gangs. 7-year inquiry, and it didn't do enough on the rape gangs.
Well, what the J inquiry was looking at was child sex abuse overall. So not just the rape gangs, which I appreciate are most serious. She also looked at what was going on in schools, what was going on in the church, and the recommendations that come up are to protect all children from abuse.
Nigel Farage has been writing about this in the Daily Express this morning, and he said that he first raised the scandal of these rape gangs, these Pakistani rape gangs, in 2012.
Yeah.
And Tommy Robinson, to his credit, controversial figure, and Katie Hopkins,
absolutely.
who's never been allowed to
the thing about the J inquiry was it was far too broad.
It was.
As Nigel has said, it was looking into the church, everything.
But all children
it might as well have an inquiry into theft.
But this
maybe some people deserve apologies.
Can we recall a more modern, terrible scandal?
No, I agree. Of all those things, this is the most serious. I agree with that.
That didn't require on its own specifically, which could have involved all the elders of that community.
What we should be concerned about,
why it's still happening.
What we should be concerned about, and only concerned about, are the victims.
Yes.
First of all, the historic victims, and the current victims.
Yes, I
where
agree.
this is still going on.
Yep.
That should be the number one priority. It requires swift, decisive action.
Exactly.
Something Starmer is
incapable. So don't have another inquiry just yet to delay all those things happening.
Right.
And of course, it's important to say that not all Muslim Pakistani men are rapists. So just want to point that out.
Of course.
And that, you know, we don't want to tar everybody with the same brush here, but that confusion about how to discuss that very sensitive issue is what has led us to this place. And we still have a preoccupation with the DEI agenda, which will still be encouraging some people in positions of power to be careful.
And Jay did say in that report, which was too poor, but she did say about the rape gangs that the officialdom turned a blind eye.
Yes.
Because of fears of causing racial tension.
That's right.
And it was mainly in Labour councils.
Well, there was Labour MPs, bear in mind, who actually blew the whistle on this first off. It was in their patches.
So that's why people think Starmer doesn't want a public inquiry, because it's going to focus a lot on those Labour councils, what they did.
Well, it may well do, but I don't think that's the reason not to have a public inquiry. And a public inquiry may follow. And you're absolutely right. We may need to actually go through that and bring people to book who failed those children previously.
He could, if he was any kind of worthy leader, he could easily talk about having an inquiry at a date when some of the other recommendations of the previous inquiry have been at least implemented.
He did yesterday.
He could do that, but he's not done that.
Nigel Pearce, lovely Katie Bowen has been waiting very patiently. Here she is with your headlines.
Bev, Andrew, thank you. Your top stories this hour. Professor Alexis Jay, who chaired the independent inquiry into child sex abuse, has said this morning that people should just get on with implementing the recommendations made in previous inquiries rather than holding another one. Professor Jay's comments come as the Prime Minister dismissed calls for a national inquiry yesterday, accusing the Conservatives of jumping on a bandwagon and amplifying what the far right is saying on child sexual abuse after failing to act for 14 long years. The Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, told the Commons yesterday that the government will make it an offence with professional and criminal sanctions to fail to report or cover up child sexual abuse. She added that the government will establish a victims and survivors panel to advise on wider work around the issue. That came as the Prime Minister defended his position as Director of Public Prosecutions, saying child sexual exploitation is utterly sickening and it was something he had tackled head-on whilst in that role. Shadow Justice Secretary Robert Jenrick MP called once again for a full national public inquiry earlier on GB News.
I have long advocated whole life sentences for these grooming gang perpetrators, and I've said that if they're foreign national offenders, get them out of our country, deport them, no ifs, no buts, so they never step foot on this soil of our country again. And the cowardly public officials who did turn a blind eye, they should be prosecuted as well. Not a single one has been prosecuted so far, and that is completely wrong. We need to take action, and we need now to have a full national public inquiry.
I can get pace across government to drive forward real action to implement the recommendations of the independent inquiry into child sexual abuse. Severe snow and flooding is causing major disruption across the country this morning, with delays at airports, trains cancelled and roads closed. Flights at Liverpool John Lennon Airport should resume imminently after the runway was closed for snow clearing. Bristol Airport reopened earlier on after closures to runways overnight. Yesterday, a man's body was recovered from an area of flooding in North Yorkshire. Major incidents have also been declared in Leicestershire and Lincolnshire, and East Midlands Ambulance Service has declared a critical incident. A severe flood warning is in place near Barrow-upon-Soar, meaning there is danger to life and a large-scale evacuation is required. River levels are expected to remain high there until tomorrow. The Environment Agency has 190 flood warnings, meaning that flooding is expected, and 292 flood alerts, meaning flooding is possible, in place. The same warning is in place for western and northern parts of Scotland until midday, and in Northern Ireland until 11 a.m. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. More from me in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Crash Law 24 sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2566 and 1.2051 euros. The price of gold is £2,104.56 per ounce, and the FTSE 100 at 8,233 points.
Crash Law 24 sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. It's going to be a cold start with frost and ice in places, also some snow showers which may lead to some disruption. Plenty of sunshine around, though it is going to be feeling cold. Plenty of showers feeding into northern and northwestern parts, these falling as snow, not just over hills but to lower levels too, particularly across Wales and at times central parts of England too. A chance this could lead to some disruption also. Away from these showers though, there'll be plenty of dry weather, plenty of sunshine, though it is going to be feeling cold. Highs only reaching around 6 to 7 Celsius across the south, but not really pushing much past 2 to 3 Celsius in northern areas. And with that added wind chill, that is going to make things feel even colder. Then to end the day across Scotland, we're still going to see plenty of these snow showers feeding in, likely adding to accumulations that we've already seen across northern parts of Scotland. Similar across Northern Ireland, northwestern parts of England, still seeing a good influx of these showers moving through, likely drier in the far east of northern parts of England. And similar across Wales, still seeing plenty of these snow showers, the driest and brightest of the weather likely across the very far southeast. But into the evening, we are still likely to see plenty of clear spells. So once again, another sharp frost and likely seeing further icy stretches by the time we reach the morning. And it's not going to be completely dry. We're still going to see a continuation of these showers, particularly moving into northwestern parts, still falling as snow. But many towns and cities widely dropping below zero, particularly in rural spots where it's likely to be especially cold. Then to start on Wednesday, we see more of the same. Once again, plenty of sunshine to start, though still seeing a feed of those snow showers into the northwest. And then a chance we could see some outbreaks of snow falling into southern counties too, though there is slightly lower confidence as to exactly whereabouts the snow will be, though there is a snow warning issued across the far south. And for many of us, once again, it is going to be a cold end to the day. That's it from me. Bye-bye for now.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. Flights at Aberdeen Airport are suspended because of freezing conditions. In West Yorkshire, the A58M Inner Ring Road in Leeds has a lane closed eastbound where someone's broken out at West Street, taking half an hour in queues from the Elland Road interchange. Flights at Liverpool John Lennon Airport are suspended because of snow. On the M56 in Cheshire, the eastbound exit at Junction 12 at Runcorn's closed because of snow. In Flintshire, the A55 North Wales Expressway is blocked westbound by a breakdown at Junction 32A at Pentraholkin, causing queues. The A1 in Nottinghamshire is closed southbound from the Claypole turnoff to the Marston turnoff and northbound through Lincolnshire from the Melton Mowbray turnoff to Long Bennington because of flooding. The M4 in Berkshire, 2 lanes are closed eastbound after an accident and spillage between junctions 13 and 12 from Newbury to Reading causing delays, and train services are suspended between Liscard and Loo.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Very good morning, 10:40. This is Britain's Newsroom with Bev and Andrew.
If you're overweight or a smoker, bad news.
Due to the government's pledge to clear the backlog, those patients waiting for a knee or hip surgery will be sent to the back of the queue.
They won't be chucked to the back of the queue as the auto queue. So
I was a little more polite there.
Now, we're going to talk to the actor and body positivity influencer, George Keywood, who memorably joined us on the sofa here in October. George, back then you told us you were dieting. How's it going?
Yeah, it's going really well. I mean, I've lost, 20 kilos in the past 3 months now,
right?
On Monjaro. So, yeah, I mean, the weight loss is continuing to work and is in full swing. But it's just really disappointing to hear that if you're a smoker or you're overweight, now you're going to be put back on the list for non-related surgeries. You know, it's not to do with weight loss, is it? It's not a surgery for a gastric sleeve or anything like that. It's for a knee replacement or, it's
well,
a
they're trying to encourage you, George, to lose the weight a bit quicker.
I
mean, you've got a lot of weight. I said it to you before, George. You've got a lot more weight to lose, haven't you? What weight are you?
Well, I have, but look, I have private healthcare, so for me, I don't cost anyone anything.
Right.
And I pay tens of thousands of pounds in tax every year, so, I mean, it's not acceptable, is it? If if I have arthritis in my knees and I need them replaced, which is not through being overweight or anything like that, then why should I be sent to the back of the list? You know, it doesn't make sense, does it?
I guess the argument is limited resources on the NHS and the need to give the people with the best possible chance of recovery things like a new knee or a new hip. And if you're carrying a few extra stone, it's going to put pressure on those joints, that it's a brutal business, but choices have to be made for the people who are going to be healthiest.
I mean, look, if you're going to make a choice, then maybe we should tally up who's paid more in tax. And maybe the people that have paid more should get the surgeries first then, shouldn't they?
But what about, what about smokers, though, George? I mean, smoking is a self-inflicted... It's just not good for your health in any shape or form. Shouldn't they be made to go to the back of the queue unless they at least try and give up smoking?
It's a difficult one because I'm a smoker, so...
You're a smoker as well.
George. And you have the most beautiful wife in the world, so you have to stay well for your beautiful wife and your little boy.
How many fags do you smoke a day?
Oh, about 20 a day, unfortunately. I mean, for me, I was brought up on a council estate, so, you know, teenagers...
I don't smoke, and I'm not as heavy as you are.
But as you know, on a council estate, everybody's smoking cigarettes back then. You know, it was quite a common thing. It's a cool thing to do, whereas these days it's now vaping. You know, it's kind of... This is the problem, isn't it? I mean, if you remove the problem, then people aren't going to smoke. And if you remove bad food choices and you clamp down on the companies that are producing the junk, then you can solve the issue. But I mean, it's a difficult one, isn't it? I mean, the government make a lot of money out of tax on cigarettes and smoking, so why do they want to get rid of it? You know, it's a very difficult situation because they want to attack the smokers and the obese people, but these people are actually paying quite a lot of money in tax and VAT and stuff without people even realising.
Yeah,
you
George,
know, so it's a hard one.
It's great to see you. Thank you so much for joining us again. George Keywood.
Step out your bags.
And
Thank you.
Up next, I told you he's got a beautiful wife. You've got to go and find them on social media. She's absolutely gorgeous.
Well, and he's a nice bloke.
He's lovely.
He just needs to get that weight off.
Right, up next, Reform UK Party Chairman Zia Youssef is going to join us. Do not go anywhere. But first, I quite like this bit. It's the top European holiday destination forecast. There you go.
I forecast a perfect holiday in the sun.
Weather looking good then?
For sure, and no worries about our travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
If you're on the hunt for some winter sun, I'm afraid it's often going to be cloudy, also with some rain. Largely dry across central areas, but it is going to be windy at times. Some cloud and rain moving into parts of Madeira and Lisbon, though largely dry across Tenerife and largely dry across central areas of the Mediterranean too. But as we move further east, more cloud for parts of Italy and also Greece, and this could be thick enough to produce some rain at times. More in the way of sunshine towards the end of the week, and temperatures widely in the mid to high teens.
Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Britain's Royal Collection of Art is one of the most important and largest in the world. And it's also one of the last great European royal collections to remain intact. And built up over many centuries, it has extraordinary depth. And curators have delved into its riches to produce an exhibition of Italian drawings between 1450 and 1600. There are household names here: Michelangelo, Leonardo da Vinci. Some of the drawings are complete works in themselves. Some are studies for images that would appear in much larger pieces. And some are anatomical studies which enabled these artists to draw the human form in all its perfection.
This is the earliest drawing in the exhibition of around 1450, and it's made by Fra Angelico, the great Florentine painter. It may seem an obvious thing to say, but we only have drawings like this if they have survived. And these drawings were not seen at the time as works of art. They were workshop studies. They were as functional as a hammer or a paintbrush, if you like, in the workshop. But the fact that a drawing would survive from 1450 to the present day shows that first it was useful, and it was a work that would have been referred to constantly in the artist's studio, and only later was it valued by collectors as an exemplar of the artist's genius, if you like, the way in which we might think of it today. So a drawing like this, which is in almost perfect condition, has got a history of being valued for different reasons from when it was produced to the present.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back, 10:48, Britain's Newsroom.
GB News. We're joined now by Reform UK Party Chairman Zia Yusuf. Zia, morning to you and Happy New Year to you. Not a great start for you because Elon Musk, who used to be a great champion of Reform UK, and Nigel Farage now says he's not up to it. Is he right?
Well, Happy New Year to you and everyone watching at home. Firstly, it's been an incredible start to the year. We've started it similarly to the way we ended it. We've been adding thousands of new members every single day. We've had two incredible conferences sold out with only a few weeks' notice, and an incredible energy and huge positive momentum that's come from that. In terms of Elon Musk and what he said on Twitter, look, I tweeted about this just a short while after he did. As a tech entrepreneur myself, I believe that Elon Musk is the greatest entrepreneur of all time by some distance, and I'm very grateful for everything that he does for humanity. That doesn't mean that one has to agree with every political position somebody has. And I will say this about Nigel Farage with regards to whether he has what it takes, whether he's the right person. Nigel, nobody has done more for the British people in terms of politicians over the last 3 decades. People know what Nigel stands for. In terms of how tough he is, he survived a devastating plane crash. I'm sure some of you will remember that. He carried on. He's been attacked relentlessly, but in the mainstream media for decades, never relented in standing up for what he believes. Nobody has done more to eliminate the far right in this country than Nigel with regards to the BNP and the EDL. And I'll also say this. Nigel Farage is somebody who, there's a joke in politics you often hear. People often told me when I came into politics, what you'll find with politicians is they'll tell you, here are my principles, and if you don't like them, I have others. And the reason it's funny is because it's true. I mean, that's generally the way politicians behave, and it's why the country is in the state that it's in. You only really know if somebody has principles when they're tested, and that test is this. Are they willing to stand up for those principles when there is meaningful and material cost by them doing so? The British people got a clear answer as to that question when it comes to Nigel.
Zia, has Reform... do you view Elon Musk a little differently now after the last few days? Are you going to keep him a little bit more at arm's reach? Maybe the money that he might have been offering would have been nice to have, but not necessarily something that you require?
My opinion and our opinion of Elon Musk is unchanged. As I said, we've always had enormous respect for him. We think he's an incredible entrepreneur. Look, like any relationship, things can go up and down. We at Reform are continuing to be focused on growing our membership, getting our message out to the British people, and there's been no change on that. You know, our membership numbers are live. You can see even on the day of that tweet, the membership numbers actually accelerated. So we don't spend a huge amount of time thinking about that particular point. We're focused on building our party. We've always been really clear, by the way, whether it's Mr. Musk or anybody else, we're going to articulate as Reform. This is what we stand for. We stand for the values of community, of family, and of community and country. We believe we need political leaders who are strong enough and courageous enough, put the interests of the British people first, and do what is necessary to turn around this great country. If you believe in those values and you agree with that, please come on board and join our movement.
So is it appropriate for a British political party to take tens of millions of pounds, which seem to be on offer, and your treasurer, Nick Candy, said it could be as much as £20 million from an American billionaire who doesn't even have a vote in this country. Is it appropriate?
Well, what is appropriate is to ensure that we follow the rules and follow the laws, and those have to be equal for everybody. I mean, it's clear that Labour, for example, have taken millions and millions of pounds from foreign businessmen via UK entities. So, look, we will follow the rules. I will say, Elon Musk has done an incredible job of shining a bright, disinfecting light on some of the biggest injustices in this country and holding Keir Starmer to account in a way that, frankly, with GB News notably accepted along with a few others, that the mainstream media have done very little to do. And that's half the problem. What people really despise is not just the horrific crimes, but the way in which they've been covered up, the way in which people are admonished and insulted just for talking about them. It does a great injustice to the victims. And I also just want to mention here, because we haven't talked about this, and this is actually the most important thing, far more important than conversations on Twitter, is justice for the victims. And still, the Labour Party refuse to commit to a full independent national inquiry. The Tories had 14 years. Now they want to have a vote about it. They've been in government for 14 years. They never did it. We are not only going to do it and make sure that it's done properly, because many of these inquiries, of course, are done very poorly. We will also, if Labour won't commit to it, as Nigel has said this morning, we will launch our own private inquiry by asking senior former judges to run that for us. And we have many people lining up to fund that.
OK, very quickly, we're up against the clock. How problematic is it that Elon Musk seems to be very pro-Tommy Robinson?
Elon Musk purchased Twitter for $44 billion because he wanted to save free speech. We think that's a brilliant thing. Everybody's entitled to their opinion. Nigel has been clear about this. All of our MPs and Reform leadership have been clear about what our position is. So no, it's not a problem at all. That's what free speech means.
But Tommy Robinson is this divisive figure, and that is a problem for the Reform Party, isn't it? How you handle him. Richard Tice talked about the people at his rally as being that lot, dismissed people who were holding up Union Jack flags. It's a difficult balance for you to get right, isn't it?
Well, I take issue with that characterisation of what Richard said. But I will say this, again, what Reform are about are the MPs that we have, the values that we stand for, and our policies. And as we continue to grow, we're now polling consistently at between 23 and 25%, which means that somewhere between 6 and 8 million people in this country would vote for us. There's going to be some plurality in those views. I think we've been crystal clear about this. That's why it's caused a bit of a firestorm, because Nigel, our leader, unlike most political leaders, has been willing to be very, very clear and decisive as to what our position is. So no, I don't think it is a problem.
You've had plenty of Tory defectors, although none of them are household names, it has to be said. When are you going to get some Labour defectors?
Well, let's see what happens. I want to be really clear. Reform does no active outreach for defectors, and we actually turn away a decent percentage of those once you join. And I'm talking including at the council level, obviously. It's not only important that, what's really important is people want to join us, that they join us for the right reasons. In terms of Labour MPs, I will say that unfortunately, on average, the quality of the people on the Labour backbenches, and indeed, well, particularly the front benches, is pretty poor, pretty appalling, which is one reason why the rate at which this country is declining has actually accelerated from the already devastating pace that the Tories left it at. So we'll have to wait and see. There are obviously some good people there. Let's see what happens.
OK, thank you so much, Zia Youssef there, Reform UK Party chairman. Doesn't pull any punches, does he?
He's a very good advocate
great
for
talker.
Reform, I think.
Yeah, he's a very good advocate. Now, government...
We have to read this boring statement from the Home Office.
That's right. This is about the grooming gangs, and they say no child should ever suffer sexual abuse or exploitation, and it's paramount that we do more to protect vulnerable children, which is why we are working at pace across government to drive forward real action to implement the recommendations of the independent inquiry into child sexual abuse.
Did you catch that?
Well, hurry up.
Still to come. The weather is causing chaos across Britain. Hundreds of schools are shut. Why? Travel's also bad. Why are we always so unprepared for a little bit of winter? It is January after all.
Imagine how £50,000 in cash from us could make your new year go with a bang. From treats to holidays to fun times with the family, a totally tax-free £50,000 in cash could make you feel alive in 2025. And just one entry into the Great British Giveaway really could make £50,000 cash all yours. For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Dora Carrington is not known to lots of people, and very few pieces are in public collections. So you have had a great deal of work to do to put this exhibition together.
Absolutely. It's been, next year, it will be 30 years since the last major exhibition of Carrington's work, which happened in 1995 at the Barbican Gallery. And I guess if people know Carrington's work, they might have seen the film that took place that year, that came out that year, starring Emma Thompson as Carrington and Jonathan Pryce as Lytton Strachey, who was her main kind of key relationship in her life. And that, in a way, dramatised a lot of those relationships. And so people will often know her life as much as her art. There's only 16 works in public collections. And so apart from chances such as the big billboard campaign you mentioned 10 years ago, there have been very few chances to actually see her work in the flesh. And so what this exhibition does is bring together around 80 works by Carrington and a few of her key contemporaries, providing a new generation really a chance to see and enjoy her work. She was one of the most remarkable of her generation at the Slade School of Art. She won several prizes for her drawing and her draftsmanship. And in the first room of the exhibition, we have some of the work, for example, a couple of female nudes that she painted when she was at the Slade, and they really are kind of quite outstanding.
One of the things that's been said is that in her landscapes, she's sometimes painting the human body as well as the landscape. Is that something that occurred to you? Can you stand up that?
Yes, I mean, one of her most famous paintings we have of Spain has. It's very much like you could liken it to the female form. You know, the kind of the
delicately put.
Yes.
GB News, the People's Channel.
The 7th of January 2025, live across the UK, Britain's Newsroom with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
So, Reform UK chairman Zia Youssef has just told Britain's Newsroom that his party has no problem with tech billionaire Elon Musk after Musk said that Farage did not have what it takes to be party leader.
Tech entrepreneur myself, I believe that Elon Musk is the greatest entrepreneur of all time by some distance, and I'm very grateful for everything that he does for humanity.
Starmer, the Prime Minister, biting back over his criticism of the government's handling of the grooming gang scandal. This is how the Prime Minister described anyone who had the temerity to call for a full-scale public inquiry.
Politicians who sat in government for many years, calling for inquiries because they want to jump on a bandwagon of the far right.
And talking of bandwagons, Home Secretary Yvette Cooper yesterday announced that child groomers will get tougher prison sentences, but still no inquiry.
It is never an excuse to use race and ethnicity or community relations as an excuse not to investigate and punish sex offenders.
Of course, that's exactly what did happen. Now, if you're overweight or a smoker, you could be waiting a long time for your knee replacement, as the NHS is going to shove you right to the back of the queue.
Floods, snow and ice. There are 200 weather warnings in place as the north is battered by snow and ice, with flooding mainly in the south.
The Environment Agency is warning of a danger to life. With 2 major incidents declared in the East Midlands, homes have been evacuated throughout the night.
blooming grids and dredge the rivers. There's been so little care of our streets and our water infrastructure. There's no wonder the streets are flooded.
Yeah, and it must be so infuriating. First day back to school for millions of kids today in England.
And just to be clear, I wasn't shouting at Will Hollis there. I wasn't asking him to get out with his rake. I saw somebody yesterday, driving down the road, I saw somebody in Oxfordshire with a stick, pulling, taking the leaves out of the grid, and the water from the road just all mysteriously
Funny that.
going away.
The job that should be done by road sweepers, councils, but they don't do it.
Climate change, isn't it, of course? Let us know your thoughts this morning. We're still reflecting on what Zia Youssef had to say then.
Yeah, he says no problem with Elon Musk, even though Elon Musk says Nigel Farage doesn't have what it takes, although there's been a bit of a love-in, apparently, on social media today.
A little bit. I don't think it's quite as much as we might think, but Elon Musk is going after everyone. He's taken a massive swipe at Ed Davey as well, leader of the Liberal Democrats this morning as well. We'll tell you about that in just a moment. GBNews.com/yoursay for your thoughts, but first, the very latest news with Katie Bowen.
Bev, Andrew, thank you and good morning. It's 3 minutes past 11. These are your latest headlines from the GB Newsroom. Professor Alexis Jay, who chaired the independent inquiry into child sex abuse, has said this morning that people should just get on with implementing the recommendations made in previous inquiries rather than holding another one. Professor Jay's comments come as the Prime Minister dismissed calls for a national inquiry yesterday, accusing the Conservatives of jumping on a bandwagon and amplifying what the far right is saying on child sexual abuse after failing to act for 14 long years. The Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, told the Commons yesterday that the government will make it an offence with professional and criminal sanctions to fail to report or cover up child sexual abuse. She added that the government will establish a victims and survivors panel to advise on wider work around the issue. That came as the Prime Minister said he had tackled child sexual exploitation head-on during his time as Director of Public Prosecutions. A short while ago, Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp said that the Labour Party's announcement that they will whip their MPs to vote against a national inquiry into the scandal is total moral cowardice. Shadow Justice Secretary Robert Jenrick MP called once again for that inquiry earlier on GB News.
I have long advocated whole life sentences for these grooming gang perpetrators, and I've said that if they're foreign national offenders, get them out of our country, deport them, no ifs, no buts, so they never step foot on this soil of our country again. And the cowardly public officials who did turn a blind eye, they should be prosecuted as well. Not a single one has been prosecuted so far, and that is completely wrong. We need to take action, and we need now to have a full national public inquiry.
While a Home Office spokesman issued the following statement: "We are working at pace across government to drive forward real action to implement the recommendations of the independent inquiry into child sexual abuse." Severe snow and flooding is causing major disruption across the country this morning, with delays at airports, trains cancelled and roads closed. Flights at Liverpool John Lennon Airport should resume imminently after the runway was closed for snow clearing. Bristol Airport reopened earlier on after closures to runways overnight. Yesterday, a man's body was recovered from an area of flooding in North Yorkshire. Major incidents have also been declared in Leicestershire and Lincolnshire, and East Midlands Ambulance Service has declared a critical incident. A severe flood warning is in place near Barrow-upon-Soar, meaning there is danger to life and large-scale evacuation is required. River levels there are expected to remain high until tomorrow. The Environment Agency has 190 flood warnings, meaning flooding is expected, and 292 flood alerts, meaning flooding is possible in place. A yellow snow and ice warning is in place for western and northern parts of Scotland until midday. Well, the bad weather isn't just here at home, as Storm Blair has killed 5 people in the US. More than 60 million Americans are facing weather warnings, and 7 states have declared emergencies, including Kansas and Missouri. Washington, D.C. is bracing itself for heavy snowfall. Forecasters believe the extreme weather is being caused by the polar vortex. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced his resignation yesterday after 9 years in power. The 53-year-old said at a press conference in Ottawa that he would stay on as both Prime Minister and leader of the Liberals until the party chooses a new chief. He also announced that Parliament will be prorogued until the 24th of March. Trudeau said that he was fighting internal battles in his party after he faced plummeting popularity at the polls. Today is the 10th anniversary of the Charlie Hebdo attack in Paris, where 12 people were killed and 11 injured in its newsroom. The French satirical magazine has marked the anniversary with a special edition, with the word indestructible appearing on the cover. Brothers Sharif and Saeed Kouachi stormed the offices of the magazine on the 7th of January 2015 in retaliation to the magazine printing cartoons of the Prophet Muhammad. The shootings marked the start of 3 days of terrorist attacks in Paris, and President Macron is currently attending an event to mark the anniversary. Retail giant Next has said it is facing a £67 million surge in wage costs this year, adding it will be forced to raise prices by 1%. The retailer blamed Labour's budget after the government announced plans to increase employer national insurance contributions and the minimum wage from April. Next also warned of slowing sales growth in 2025. The warning comes after the crucial golden quarter for retailers in 2024 failed to give them the send-off they hoped for, with sales just 0.4% higher over the 3 months to December than in the same period in 2023. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now let's go back to Bev and Andrew.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom, live across the UK with Andrew and Bev. By the way, thank you for watching us yesterday.
Oh, yeah. Because we were back for the first time this year, for the first time together for 2 years, 2 weeks. Some people say 2 years.
It felt like 2 years for me, Andrew.
Oh, please. We did have a divorce lawyer on yesterday, and it was not to give us advice on divorcing, although she's often wanted it. But we had huge figures on the TV yesterday. We don't know about our radio figures, but we can tell generically, we can feel it. They're going up all the time. So thank you for watching and thank you for listening. We do appreciate it because we're nowhere without you watching and listening. Yeah, we're beating all the other channels by a mile in this slot in the morning, I have to say, the other news channels. And the best thing is you watched us yesterday for 70% of our show. Well, we have a 2.5-hour show, so thank you for sticking with us for so much of the morning. Now, we asked you this morning for your pictures, and David said, I can't get out of my driveway. The roads in Ogden are blocked with snow and ice. No salt wagons have been anywhere near us. My son and I can't go to work. I'm self-employed. No, isn't that's terrible.
Where's Ogden?
We're going to Google that for us because we're not sure where Ogden is.
I'm so sorry, David. I'm not sure where Ogden is.
David, that is terrible because if you're self-employed, you're not getting paid. You still must take it up with the council because he's paying his council tax, and that is a job of the council to get the roads clear.
Where are they? They want to know what the weather's like. Just watch West Yorkshire. Do you want to know, honestly, the council, how can they not know the snow was coming? Do they not watch GB News? We have the weather on every 5 minutes. Ken says, I'm in Shipley.
West Yorkshire again.
Another one, West Yorkshire, where the main roads are passable, but the side roads are dangerous. Yeah. Again, it's a bit like I was saying about the block grids and the flooding. This isn't just about bad weather. This is underfunded local services and people not going out and gritting the roads.
It's always like a full plan. I remember many years ago when Boris was the Mayor of London, the gritting lorries couldn't get out to grit because the snow kept the gritting lorries in their storage areas because they hadn't thought about that. I mean, there's just sort of the basic rudimentary things that you have to... You couldn't make it up. So let's keep more pictures, emails coming in about the weather because I do think it's pretty shameful that the first day back at school, hundreds of schools are closed. What a nightmare for mum and dad, and probably more so for grandpa and grandma who've got to step in.
There isn't a can-do attitude, is there? There's no sense of who in the council has gone, right, let's roll up our sleeves, like star medals.
Because 20 years ago, there would have been a major row about this, that schools were closed because of some snow.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, let's have a quick look at what you've been saying.
It is January.
Tim says, don't you know, Bev, the council workers have been told not to walk in the snow, let alone drive.
Well, and that's the story on the front of the Telegraph. I pointed this out earlier. ASLEF the train drivers union, remember they got their drivers a 15% pay rise over 3 years. Train services cancelled over the weekend because the drivers were told not to walk on the 2 inches of snow. 2 inches.
Madness. Richard, good morning. You've got in touch. You're a member as well of GB News. Thank you. And you said, why are they calling it extreme weather? It seems relatively typical winter weather.
It's January.
Milder than a lot I can remember. I guess it's part of the man-made global warming con. It is, Richard. And the trouble is people use that as an excuse to not do their jobs.
Do you know, too much detail probably. When it's winter, you put the winter duvet on. Put the winter duvet on. I've taken it back off. It's not cold. It just isn't.
So what I was going to go
back to the summer duvet.
So you've gone back to your summer duvet. Do you have your pyjamas on as well?
No, I've got a hot water bottle if I need it. I was bought it by a very good friend.
And flannelette pyjamas?
No
I'm seeing you in very nice...
I wear no pyjamas.
Buttoned-up pyjamas with a little collar.
No pyjamas.
No pyjamas? Well, no wonder you need your big duvet. That's a bit risque, Andrew Pierce. Min has said, here we go, Storm Blair. I've never seen such a wave of suggestive media over the past week. Not long to go. Once Trump gets in the White House, the world will change. I do hope so, Min. Really We've got less than 2 weeks. His inauguration is the 20th of January. I'm going to be there.
Fantastic.
Right.
Will you know you're there?
Well, you will know I'm there because hopefully I'll be on the telly on GBNews telling you all about it. I can't wait.
It's a big moment. Now, Sir Keir Starmer has defended his time. Remember, he boasts about his time as the country's chief prosecutor when he was Director of Public Prosecutions. And then he said to those of us who've been calling for a proper inquiry into the systematic rape of those young girls by mainly Pakistani heritage gangs as far right.
So Sammy Woodhouse, you might know Sammy. She's a victim of the Rotherham scandal. She's been so brave. And she took to X yesterday, to Twitter, to say this.
This is not being far right. This is people, and not just only in our country, but around the world, having genuine concerns and outrage of what's happened, and very rightly so. Now, let's be very clear on what we're talking about, what's been happening. We are talking about children being groomed, abused, raped, tortured, trafficked, murdered, blamed, ignored, impregnated, criminalised.
Amazingly powerful, and she really went after Keir Starmer in there. Let's talk now to a hero, actually, in this story. Former Detective Constable, Greater Manchester Police in Rochdale, whistleblower Maggie Oliver. Morning, Maggie. It's always lovely to see you. When I hear Sammy talk like that, I get goosebumps because it's remarkable for a woman to have been through something so traumatic to come out so articulate, so determined, so tenacious. Is she typical, Sammy, of the girls that have suffered, or a lot of them quietly away in the background?
Yeah, many. I mean, every word that Sammy said there is true. That's the first thing to say. And for decades, there's been a reluctance or a failure to listen to the voices of the victims and the survivors. They have been blamed, they have been criminalised, they have been judged, they have been failed by all the public institutions that are meant to protect them. Finally, again, we are looking at this problem in detail. It's a shame that the reason that we've had this movement the last few days is because Elon Musk happened to write about it on Twitter. And now suddenly, last night, we've got Yvette Cooper announcing that they're going to implement just 3 at the moment of the 20 recommendations from the National Abuse Inquiry led by Alexis Jay, of which I was a part. I'd say it's painfully slow, too little, too late. Are they really going to happen? I don't know.
Maggie, the worry too, isn't it, is that this is still continuing, despite the furore of the last week, despite the Jay report, which took 7 years, God only knows why it took so long, that there are still young girls being systematically targeted by predominantly Pakistani heritage gangs.
Yeah, that's very true, Andrew. And you both know that I run my own charity now, the Maggie Oliver's Foundation. So I'm not talking about cases of the past. I'm talking about victims being suffering today. And the systems, they are slightly better than they were when I first started on this campaign. But we still have a long way to go. And we mustn't lose sight in all this political wrangling. We mustn't lose sight. We talk about grooming gangs. They are raping many, many children. We've sanitized the language. We don't talk about the horror. We're talking about politicians who have failed repeatedly. But that doesn't reflect the pain and the life-destroying consequences of these crimes for victims like Sammy, who was made very good out of something very bad. But there are, for every one of Sammy, there are probably 1,000 victims who don't want to go public, who still feel shame, who still feel blame, who feel that they have never had any justice. And I'm not speaking on behalf of them. It's just that I have got a platform to highlight the failures in the system that have led to those lives being destroyed.
Maggie, these crimes were committed, the ones we're talking about historically in Sammy's era, by predominantly, as we said, Muslim Asian men who believed that young white girls were worthless, able to be used for sexual gratification. Has that changed within these communities?
What I would say to that, Bev, is that abuse happens in every community. Whether it's in the church, whether it's in football, in schools, in the family, abuse happens everywhere. But we do not tiptoe around those issues, do we? With this particular kind of child abuse, which is life-destroying, we have to have the conversation. And, I've been talking about this for 10 years now. I worked on the drama 3 Girls. I think that the cat is well and truly out of the bag, and we are having conversations now that we should have had 20 years ago, and that would have prevented it escalating to the level it became. And the message that was sent out by not dealing with it properly, by the police failing to prosecute, by the courts failing to sentence adequately, was that we allowed the predators, the abusers, these monsters, to feel that we actually didn't think it was all that bad. And it gave them the confidence to continue abusing every year a new generation of children. That is where we as a country have failed repeatedly to protect our children and to fight for the right for them to have justice, not to be blamed. The blame lies clearly and firmly at the feet of the abusers. And I would say firmly and squarely at the feet of our public servants who have turned away from these children. They have, I've always called it willful blindness. And that's why I resigned from the police, because nobody wanted to hear what I was saying. And you don't need to be a police officer to know that raping an 11 or a 12-year-old child is against the law. I shouldn't have had to resign. It's still, 12 years on from that day, and we are still going round this same hamster wheel.
We need to see Keir Starmer stand up in the House of Commons and issue you a full and unreserved apology, don't we?
You know what, Bev? Empty words mean nothing to me. I want to see him put his actions where his mouth is. Blaming this problem on far-right extremists is actually dodging the issue. He was the director of public prosecutions when I resigned from Rochdale. And I resigned because the charges that were being levelled at the predators and the abusers of those men, I knew in detail. I knew what had happened to them because I've spoken to them all. Being threatened at gunpoint, being passed around a room like a ball, being raped on a daily basis. And he made the decision alongside the prosecutors that the man who got a 13-year-old pregnant didn't face charges of rape. He was out of prison in less than 4 years. As a tactical option, they put a child victim of that gang on the indictment so they could get her evidence into court without even telling her. Then they tried to take her children away from her. He was the DPP. And I'm sorry, when he says that his record is clear and good, I would take him straight back to that case, which 10 years later, Bev, the Chief Constable of Manchester has publicly acknowledged was borderline incompetence in the handling of it on many levels. And to this day, the CPS refused to apologise for putting that victim on the indictment as a purely tactical option. So we still have a long, long way to go. And so, words like yesterday, they can, again, actually are blaming victims and abuse victims for standing up for their right to have their abusers tackled and dealt with properly. It's smoke and mirrors, and I've heard these things so many times that I get really angry about it.
Yeah, well, so you should, and thank goodness for your anger, Maggie, because it keeps it driving forward, and we appreciate all the work that you do, Maggie Oliver there.
She's a hero, she really is. When is she going to be Dame Maggie Oliver?
Let's see. Home Office spokesman has said...
We are working at pace across government to drive forward real action to implement the recommendations of the independent inquiry into child sexual abuse.
And commenting on the criticism of Ms Phillips, Jess Phillips from Elon Musk, the Home Secretary said the Minister for Safeguarding and Violence Against Women and Girls has dedicated her career to tackling sexual violence and abuse and to being a voice for victims and survivors of the most terrible crimes, including sexual abuse.
Still to come, just out of time, Justin Trudeau has resigned. Tearful farewell, bye-bye, Pierre Trudeau, and good riddance.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GBNews, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Joining me now is food historian and author of Christmas with Dickens, Pen Vogler. Pen, let's start with Christmas Carol. Did A Christmas Carol change Britain's view of Christmas?
I think it did, enormously. Before then, people were beginning to think, as they do now, that Christmas might be being a little bit commercial. It was too much food and drink, not enough kind of seriousness or not enough kind of love and family. And what Dickens did with A Christmas Carol was show people who were coming to the cities, who were kind of losing their rural history, a new way of celebrating Christmas, that a real, just a family could get together and love and kind of get around the table together. And whereas before, a lot of those kind of Christmas dishes would have been seasonal, lots of people would have eaten them at different times of the year, Dickens does two things. He takes the goose, which is what the Cratchits are going to eat, and he turns it to a turkey, much bigger, meatier, kind of more generous. And then he takes this thing that he never calls Christmas pudding in A Christmas Carol. There's no Christmas pudding. He only calls it plum pudding, and he anchors it to that day. And interestingly, after then, people start publishing recipes for Christmas pudding, and it starts getting its name, Christmas pudding, from plum pudding. And I think all of that really comes from A Christmas Carol.
You say becomes a Christmas pudding almost immediately after A Christmas Carol is published.
Yes, I mean, it's occasionally called Christmas pudding before, but not often. And then a very famous for the time, the kind of Delia Smith of her day, lady called Eliza Acton, publishes a recipe called The Author's Christmas Pudding in 1845. And we know she's a big Dickens fan because she sent a copy of her cookbook to him.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It is 11:25, Britain's Newsroom live across the UK with Andrew and Bev. We've got the panel back with us, Nigel Nelson and Piers Pottinger. Tell us about Tulip Siddiq, why we should care about this Minister for Anti-Corruption who is in the Treasury team.
Well, because she's now referred herself to Keir Starmer's Essex chief on the basis that she's the niece of Sheikh Hasina, who was the ousted PM of Bangladesh. She's got two homes that appear to come from that family. Those homes are being investigated on the grounds of embezzlement by the Bangladesh Anti-Corruption Commission. The question obviously is how she got the homes and what happened. She says that her parents bought one of them and passed it on. there's some discrepancy about that. So anyway, she's referred to some...
that one of them might have been a gift, in which case that would have to be declared in the Register of Interest.
Yes.
If it wasn't, there would be tax implications too.
Yes, all those things. So what she's done is she's referred herself to the Essex chief. What that then means is that Laurie Magnus, the ethics man, he's got to decide whether the ministerial code has been broken. That would then be a recommendation to Keir Starmer. Keir Starmer, as Prime Minister, is the final arbiter of the ministerial code. If he ruled that she broke it, then she's out.
There's a Putin connection too, Piers Pottinger.
Oh, yes. I mean, she's being investigated, let's be clear, by the Anti-Corruption Commission in Bangladesh for facilitating a major contract with Putin, which resulted in over £1 billion of cash being lost into the coffers of her family. Her aunt was the Prime Minister, who was forced out of not only office but the country. She had to flee for her life. Now, there's a photograph of Tulip Sadiq with Putin in 2013 at the signing ceremony, which she said she was there on a personal visit. But you don't go to a signing ceremony of a major contract because you're the niece of someone signing the contract. That's just, I'm sorry, doesn't stand up. No. Also, within months of that signing, Putin was actually sanctioned by Europe and the United States. So she was dealing with arguably one of Britain's biggest enemies. That alone should raise question marks. On the second front, surely as Minister where she's for corruption, it said, well, hopefully she's against corruption, but as that minister alone, if she was a Conservative, she would be at the very least suspended whilst and again, she's referred herself. Why did, again, no leadership from Starmer. Starmer should have referred her or suspended her while this was going on. And Laurie Magnus is only looking into the question of the ownership of the houses. Incidentally, she admitted failing to declare the rent. She gets £10,000 a year from one of these houses now, rent, and she failed to declare it in August last year, and she said that was an oversight. So there are so many questions. Certainly, Tulip is not coming up roses. There are so many questions about her. If this was a Conservative minister, the whole press would be saying she's got to step aside while this is all sorted out.
I remember Boris Johnson didn't actually, even when there's rulings about this, didn't get rid of...
We're not talking about billions of pounds of corruption.
There have been rumours about this woman for a long time. You know that. Why, of all jobs in the government, did he make her minister responsible for stamping out corruption?
I know. I think probably Health or the Home Office might have been a better place to do this. I mean, the situation at the moment is that she was due to go to China this week with Rachel Reeves. They're trying to do a big trade deal with China. She's decided to stay put and sort this out.
It's because she's a liability.
Well, the question really comes down to whether or not she should then not so much be suspended, but pass on her duties to another minister in the Treasury. That, while this is going on, that would seem to be a sensible compromise before Laurie Magnus gives his recommendation.
Wouldn't it have been easy just to suspend her, as Piers said?
I'm not sure. The trouble with suspending people is you're almost sort of presuming guilt. I think that you allow the process to continue, but I do think that her duties ought to be passed on to a different minister at the moment.
Well, there's nothing fragrant about this Tulip. There's a horrific stink about her. And this really, as I keep saying, I mean, these are hugely serious matters. It's not just the ownership of a property, but that alone. The Sunday Times did a brilliant expose on Sunday of the labyrinthine nature of her property dealings, which are very suspicious at best. But it's the bigger question of dealing with Putin and actually putting in the family's coffers over £1 billion we're talking about.
When she did her first speech in the Commons, of course, Auntie Prime Minister of Bangladesh was in the public gallery to watch her. They're very close.
Yes.
And she has fled Bangladesh. Also, she's suspected of putting to death 800 of her opponents. Not a very nice woman.
No, that's
a tyrant,
right. That's
an absolute tyrant.
Oh, you're so
and
far
there,
right, you two.
there is this woman sitting in Starmer's government.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, it is absolutely unforgivable that she is still holding ministerial office. It's actually a disgrace.
Well, that'll be an interesting one to watch. Keir Starmer needs that like a hole in the head right now, doesn't he? Just when he has a list of...
prediction, her ministerial career is coming to an end quite soon.
But something that isn't coming to an end. Something that isn't coming to an end is Nigel Nelson's marriage.
Yes.
At least we hope not. Claire Pearsall. Have a look at this, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh.
There is your wedding picture, Nigel.
It is indeed, yeah. That was a little church in Lapland, a wooden church in the middle of the snow, and Claire was actually terribly cold that day.
Well, she's wearing a lovely snowman's coat.
Yes, but it's still not enough to cover her. I had layer after layer underneath that suit.
Do you have thermals on? Are you trying to...
You bet I do.
They're passion killers, aren't they, the day of your wedding?
Happy anniversary.
What was the temperature?
It was below zero, so it was probably about 5 below zero.
How lovely, though. How lovely.
I'm sure it hotted up later. I'm sure it got hotter later.
Please, this is
That
a family
Thank you, Piers.
That almost makes me want to get married seeing that, Piers.
Has anyone asked?
Whoever we are.
We like our matching. We didn't coordinate our...
Have you got somebody asked you to get married?
No, nobody's asked us to get married.
Right, so it does help. Someone does.
Right, Katie Bowen is here to bring some decorum to proceedings. Here she is with your news.
Bev, Andrew, thank you. These are your latest headlines. A brief bit of breaking news now. 25-year-old Imran Chowdhury has pleaded not guilty at Westminster Magistrates Court this morning to assisting former soldier Daniel Khalif after he escaped from prison in 2023. Chowdhury has now been bailed. Daniel Khalif escaped from HMP Wandsworth in September 2023. We'll bring you more on that story as we get it. Professor Alexis Jay, who chaired the independent inquiry into child sex abuse, has said this morning that people should just get on with implementing the recommendations made in previous inquiries rather than holding another one. Professor Jay's comments come as the Prime Minister dismissed calls for a national inquiry yesterday, accusing the Conservatives of jumping on a bandwagon and amplifying what the far right is saying on child sexual abuse after failing to act for 14 long years. The Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, told the Commons yesterday that the government will make it an offence with professional and criminal sanctions to fail to report or cover up child sexual abuse. She added that the government will establish a victims and survivors panel to advise on wider work around the issue. That came as the Prime Minister said he had tackled child sexual exploitation head-on during his time as Director of Public Prosecutions. And a short while ago, Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp said that the Labour Party's announcement that they will whip their MPs to vote against the national inquiry into the scandal is total moral cowardice. Shadow Justice Secretary Robert Jenrick MP called once again for that inquiry earlier on GB News.
I have long advocated whole life sentences for these grooming gang perpetrators, and I've said that if they're foreign national offenders, get them out of our country, deport them, no ifs, no buts, so they never step foot on this soil of our country again. And the cowardly public officials who did turn a blind eye, they should be prosecuted as well. Not a single one has been prosecuted so far, and that is completely wrong. We need to take action, and we need now to have a full national public inquiry.
Well, a Home Office spokesman issued the following statement. We are working at pace across government to drive forward real action to implement the recommendations of the independent inquiry into child sexual abuse. Severe snow and flooding is causing major disruption across the country this morning, with delays at airports, trains cancelled and roads closed. Flights at Liverpool John Lennon Airport should resume imminently after the runway was closed for snow clearing. Bristol Airport reopened earlier on after closures to runways overnight. Yesterday, a man's body was recovered from an area of flooding in North Yorkshire. And major incidents have also been declared in Leicestershire and Lincolnshire, and East Midlands Ambulance Service has declared a critical incident. A severe flood warning is in place near Barrow-upon-Soar, meaning there is danger to life and large-scale evacuation is required. River levels there are expected to remain high until tomorrow. The Environment Agency has 190 flood warnings, meaning flooding is expected, and 292 flood alerts, meaning flooding is possible, in place. And a short time ago, the Met Office issued new snow and ice warnings for Scotland and Northern Ireland that will remain in place until midday tomorrow. Those are the latest GB News headlines. More from me in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Crash Law 24 sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2548 and €1.2043. The price of gold is £2,109.60 per ounce, and the FTSE 100's at 8,238 points.
Crash Law 24 sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
Welcome back. Emily and Tom are here to tell us what's coming up on the show this afternoon.
Yeah, big show today. We're kicking off at 12 with the Charlie Peters exclusive interview.
Yes, we are indeed another survivor of the grooming gang scandal. Her story is particularly horrific. I mean, a lot of us have read through some of the notes from court proceedings over the last few days that Charlie's helped bring to light, but this is a particularly horrific one.
We
so we'll be
call
hearing
them what
from that.
they are, rape gangs.
Rape gangs, yes.
That's what they are.
Yeah, I mean, some people say it's important to talk about the grooming aspect, but I think you could talk about both.
Yeah,
grooming gangs, rape gangs, whatever you want to call them, horrific. And we were just chatting in the break about how horrendous Labour have been at dealing with this, talking about the far right instead of the issue.
As
and
he
now
was saying it yesterday, Bev and I look at each other thinking, what is he doing?
And now whipping their MPs against a vote tomorrow. Surely they could have managed that better.
Just explain that. So this is the vote which is being pushed through as to whether there's going to be another public inquiry.
That's right. So there's a bill before the House of Commons tomorrow, in Wednesday, that the Conservative Party under Kemi Badenoch have attached an amendment to, that were the amendment to pass would force that inquiry to kick into gear. But there's a huge amount of consternation over this. Some voices on the Labour side say this is a wrecking amendment that would ruin the bill because the bill isn't about an inquiry, but Kemi Badenoch wants to put that inquiry onto it. But the Conservative Party are going to be whipping their MPs to vote for this, to force that inquiry. It looks like the Labour Party will whip their MPs to vote against.
That doesn't even matter whether it's a wrecking amendment. They don't want a public inquiry, and we know that, so they wouldn't have voted for it in any way.
Feed the idea of a cover-up, and the people trying to protect Keir Starmer in his role as Director of Public Prosecutions at the time, and dozens of Labour councils
this is the
failed
thing.
to act.
How many Labour councillors, some now MPs?
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry, but the Conservatives now asking for an inquiry, they enacted an inquiry. They already had an inquiry.
Yeah. And
what am I missing here?
Well, they got the terms of reference wrong.
Different type of inquiry.
So that inquiry was launched by Theresa May in 2014. It was not just in the wake of the grooming gang stuff. It was also about Jimmy Savile.
Yeah, it was.
It was also about the Catholic Church. Yeah. It was a whole-encompassing inquiry that looked into the Church of England, into certain schools in the UK.
This is the Alexis J inquiry.
That's right. And
that's why it took 7 years.
And it took 7 years. And if you read through it, there is section after section after section that just aren't about grooming gangs. It's a very, very broad inquiry. Yeah. I haven't read the full 480 pages, but I've read the introductory a dozen or so pages.
Yeah.
It barely mentions grooming gangs. I mean, there's about half of one section.
Yeah, it brings all types of child exploitation into it, which isn't what people want. They want something specific.
And did it deal with this terrible culture in Pakistani heritage communities?
Well, we're also going to be talking to a councillor in Oldham who has strong things to say about the way the Labour Council has tried to cover this up.
Exactly.
OK, fantastic. Emily and Tom here in about 20 minutes. But up next, are mobile phones friend or foe? Should we ban social media? The under-16s like they're doing in Australia to stop kids from scrolling. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
I don't know.
Yes, it's time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. It's staying cold. We have a continued ice and snow risk, and there's also some sunshine to be had out there also. But most of the sunshine across northeast England, southern parts of England, elsewhere, quite a bit of cloud. A few showers coming into Wales, northwest England, a mixture of rain, sleet and some snow. Plenty of snow in the showers over northern Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland too. And so we do have a Met Office yellow warning in place, continuing for ice and snow across northern Scotland and much of Northern Ireland. Elsewhere, say largely fine. Not as windy across the south, but still a perishing wind across northeast Scotland. Temperatures really struggling here and feeling even colder with that wind when the snow showers come in, which they will continue to do through this evening and overnight. So further more centimetres of snow likely, especially over hills, but even at lower levels, and with temperatures tumbling again below freezing. Ice is a continued risk, as it will be again across Northern Ireland. So do take care out on the roads here. Still some snow showers coming in across North Wales, Northwest England for a time through this evening as well. A mixture of rain and sleet, though, closer to the coast and at lower levels. And those showers here will tend to ease off. Many places becoming dry with lighter winds, a hard frost, maybe some mist and fog. Continued risk of ice across the north. Cloud thickening across the south. That'll help to lift the temperatures slightly in the far southwest. But for many, it is going to be another very cold night with a hard frost down to minus double digits in some locations. The snow showers continuing in northern Scotland tomorrow, but elsewhere, many places dry and fine. But down to the south, we've got to watch this area of wet weather coming up and producing some wet weather across southern counties with the risk of some snow coming in here. Still a bit of uncertainty about how much we are going to see, but one to keep an eye on as we go through tomorrow. Elsewhere, many places dry and bright, but wherever you are, it will again be cold.
Thank you, Britain.
Thank you for watching.
Thank you for listening.
Thanks for subscribing.
Thank you for your support.
It's you that make us the People's Channel.
As we reflect on our journey so far, we're filled with immense gratitude.
You mean the world to us. We couldn't have reached this point without you.
As a very special thank you, we are giving you the chance to win one of 50 GB News thank you boxes. They're worth £50 each.
For full terms and conditions, and to enter, just go to gbnews.com/thank you.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family. Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom with Andrew and Bev.
So social media for the under 16 in Australia, it's an extraordinary step, has been banned, with smartphones also banned in primary schools across the nation.
So what exactly is going on here? Should we be doing the same? Well, we're joined by the regional leader of Smartphone Free Childhood, Jennifer Powers. Great to see you, Jennifer. I think you do really important work. First of all, tell us who Smartphone Free Childhood are and what do you want to see?
Well, hello. Yeah, Smartphone Free Childhood is a grassroots movement. It started nearly a year ago, February of 2024, and it's parents across the country deciding to delay giving their child a smartphone for as long as possible. There is strength in numbers. And, you know, it's just incredibly important. I think parents are waking up to the reality that smartphones are bad for their children in so many ways, from sleep deprivation, attention, cyberbullying, and all the potential for exploitation that happens online. So 2024 really was the year of the parents' revolt with regard to smartphones and social media. And I'm looking forward to what can happen in 2025.
So you make it OK for parents to say to their kids, you shouldn't have a smartphone. And you even organise, like, play date events, don't you, with kids who don't have smartphones so that other children get together and, I don't know, play rather than look at TikTok.
Yeah, I did that myself, actually, here in Southwest London. Last school year, we had Free Play Fridays, where we encouraged all the schools in my local area to come to the rec after school on Friday and just hang out. And it was a great way of keeping children off screens. I mean, look, parents have been put in an impossible position. We know so much of life is organized via WhatsApp groups and Snap and all of that. So many parents don't want their children to miss out on the in-joke or being invited to things. They don't want them to become socially isolated. But if you know, we can have that coming together of parents in a particular class or year group or school or village, it means your child is no longer alone and you're no longer alone. And so that's really what Smartphone Free Childhood is all about. We have parent packs where you can sign up and make a digital commitment.
Jennifer, we're at pressure of time. Can I interrupt you, Jennifer? Because isn't the problem, you've mentioned schools, isn't the fact a lot of work kids do at school is done on their smartphone?
Well, I agree, Andrew. That is it is an issue, and there's absolutely no reason why any school anywhere in the country should require a child to have a smartphone. Yes, a lot of schools require tablets or laptops, which are slightly different because, of course, they're less portable and they're usually used in semi-supervised or supervised locations like the home or school. But no school should be requiring any student to have a smartphone, and it's not good for schools, and it's not good for kids.
OK, Jennifer, we've run out of time. Jennifer Powers there for the regional leader of smartphone-free childhood. We didn't even get to talk about the situation in Australia.
And there's a think tank who's going to do a big debate on that next week, and we're going to do a debate too.
We've run out of time. Is that no, it's only 11:45. Yeah. All right, here's the weather again. Top European destinations. Thought we're finished.
You're looking happy.
Well, the forecast looks good.
So you've sorted the travel insurance then?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
If you're on the hunt for some winter sun, I'm afraid it's often going to be cloudy, also with some rain. Largely dry across central areas, but it is going to be windy at times. Some cloud and rain moving into parts of Madeira and Lisbon, though largely dry across Tenerife and largely dry across central areas of the Mediterranean too. But as we move further east, more cloud for parts of Italy and also Greece, and this could be thick enough to produce some rain at times. More in the way of sunshine towards the end of the week, and temperatures widely in the mid to high teens.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
I'm Ellie Costello, and thank you so much for joining us here on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Well, it's interesting because I haven't actually been told specifically what I've done, which has resulted in me being removed from my committee position, which was head of daytime. I started a podcast in September in which I interviewed Charlie Bentley-Astor, who's a detransitioner. I then also interviewed Graham Linehan, and I wrote an article for his Substack. And shortly after that, I was told that I had been suspended, and the university union started an investigation into me. And that very quickly became apparent to me that it was an interrogation of my gender-critical views rather than any sort of misconduct that I had been alleged to.
Right. And Graham Linehan has been outspoken on issues relating to transgender ism, whatever you want to call it, gender ideology. And so perhaps just by having associated yourself with him as a controversial figure, that was why the investigation happened, you suspect?
Yes, and already it's quite clear that guilt by association is a crime that you can commit within university societies. I actually purchased my free speech union membership way before this all happened, when a friend helped me edit the episode with Charlie, and he got in trouble with a separate society who told him that he must disassociate himself from me, and if he didn't, further measures would be taken. So at that point, I thought, well, I better put some damage control in place and purchase my membership in case anything happens to me.
So this decision is made by the student union, right? Is that made up of fellow students? Or who's making this call?
Well, that's actually part of my appeal, so the process has been completely improper. They haven't followed their own guidelines. There are two different guidelines as to whether a complaint is dealt with the society itself, so Leeds Student Radio, or the union, and it's basically been a mishmash of both. So it's been an improper procedure, but it is, as far as I'm aware, it's the student union who's decided to remove me.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Simon Evans, and this is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Well, the weather outside is frightful.
Well, not outside here.
Should we get an update from Leicestershire? GB News reporter Will Hollis is there. Will, what's going on?
Yes, well, the Environment Agency is warning of a danger to life here in Barrow-upon-Soar in Leicestershire, where last night a severe flood warning was put in place, meaning that people are very much at risk. This here is Proctor's Caravan Park in usually quite an idyllic part of the county. In the East Midlands, there have been 2 major incidents declared because of the flooding by local councils and local fire services. Here, the local fire service, Leicestershire Fire and Rescue Service, has been conducting a large-scale evacuation all the way throughout the night. The fire officers that I've been speaking to today have been saying that they've been up all the way throughout the night and they're continuing rescues. The advice that they give to people here and around the country where there are 134 flood warnings in place is to never enter flood water and certainly don't drive through it.
OK, thank you, Will Hollis there. Now, earlier we spoke to the chairman of Reform UK, Zia Youssef, and we asked him if Elon Musk was right to criticise Nigel Farage. Here's what he said.
Firstly, it's been an incredible start to the year. We've started it similarly to the way we ended it. We've been adding thousands of new members every single day. We've had 2 incredible conferences sold out with only a few weeks' notice, and an incredible energy and huge positive momentum that's come from that. In terms of Elon Musk and what he said on Twitter, look, I tweeted about this just a short while after he did. As a tech entrepreneur myself, I believe that Elon Musk is the greatest entrepreneur of all time by some distance. And I'm very grateful for everything that he does for humanity. That doesn't mean that one has to agree with every political position somebody has. And I will say this about Nigel Farage with regards to whether he has what it takes, whether he's the right person. Nigel, nobody has done more for the British people in terms of politicians over the last 3 decades. People know what Nigel stands for. In terms of how tough he is, he survived a devastating plane crash. I'm sure some of you will remember that. He carried on. He's been attacked relentlessly, but in the mainstream media for decades, never relented in standing up for what he believes. Nobody has done more to eliminate the far right in this country than Nigel with regards to the BNP and the EDL. And I'll also say this. Nigel Farage is somebody who, there's a joke in politics you often hear. People often told me when I came into politics, what you'll find with politicians is they'll tell you, here are my principles. And if you don't like them, I have others. And the reason it's funny is because it's true. I mean, that's generally the way politicians behave, and it's why the country is in the state that it's in. You only really know if somebody has principles when they're tested, and that test is this. Are they willing to stand up for those principles when there is meaningful and material cost by them doing so? The British people got a clear answer as to that question when it comes to Nigel.
He puts his case well, doesn't he? Well, that's it from Britain's Newsroom. Up
What do you want me
next,
to
of
do?
course, Good Afternoon Britain with Tom and Emily. We'll see you tomorrow.
See you then.
OK, we've got a lot coming up on the show. Stay with us because we're going to be bringing you a new exclusive from Charlie Peters in Oldham. He's speaking to a survivor of the grooming gang scandal who has the most horrific story to tell us.
Yes, and later in the programme we'll be speaking to Alicia Kearns, the Shadow Safeguarding Minister, shadowing, of course, Jess Phillips for her take on it. Also, is Trump trying to buy Greenland? All to come after your weather.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. It's going to be a cold start with frost and ice in places, also some snow showers which may lead to some disruption. Plenty of sunshine around, though it is going to be feeling cold. Plenty of showers feeding into northern and northwestern parts, these falling as snow, not just over hills but to lower levels too, particularly across Wales and at times central parts of England too. A chance this could lead to some disruption also. Away from these showers though, there'll be plenty of dry weather, plenty of sunshine, though it is going to be feeling cold. Highs only reaching around 6 to 7 Celsius across the south, but not really pushing much past 2 to 3 Celsius in northern areas. And with that added wind chill, that is going to make things feel even colder. Then to end the day, across Scotland, we're still going to see plenty of these snow showers feeding in, likely adding to accumulations that we've already seen across northern parts of Scotland. Similar across Northern Ireland, northwestern parts of England, still seeing a good influx of these showers moving through, likely drier in the far east of northern parts of England. And similar across Wales, still seeing plenty of these snow showers, the driest and brightest of the weather likely across the very far southeast. But into the evening, we are still likely to see plenty of clear spells. So once again, another sharp frost and likely seeing further icy stretches by the time we reach the morning. And it's not going to be completely dry. We're still going to see a continuation of these showers, particularly moving into northwestern parts, still falling as snow. But many towns and cities widely dropping below zero, particularly in rural spots where it's likely to be especially cold. Then to start on Wednesday, we see more of the same. Once again, plenty of sunshine to start, though still seeing a feed of those snow showers into the northwest. And then a chance we could see some outbreaks of snow falling into southern counties too, though there is slightly lower confidence as to exactly whereabouts the snow will be, though there is a snow warning issued across the far south. And for many of us, once again, it is going to be a cold end to the day. That's it from me. Bye-bye for now.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
£50,000 in tax-free cash is like having over £4,000 each month to play with for a whole year. And it could be yours in the biggest Great British giveaway so far. That could be a holiday each month, your mortgage covered, or just the ability to send some of those day-to-day financial stresses packing. For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Figures released by the National Child Measurement Programme in 2024 found that almost 1 in 10 children was obese in the first year of school. Children living in deprived areas are twice as likely to be overweight as those in more affluent parts. Organisations like the Prepped Foundation are educating youngsters about healthy eating by giving them the skills to create balanced meals. TV chef James Golding has joined the foundation as the head of food education, and he joins me now to talk about the work. James, lovely to see you here.
Good to see you too. So Prepped used to be Table Talk Foundation, and it's now obviously Prep for Life, Prep for Knowledge. It's basically a charity to encourage kids to have a better understanding of food, but at the same time enjoy cooking and hopefully make better food choices in their life, as well as perhaps share the information we give them with their families.
Do you see them developing an understanding of the difference between healthy and unhealthy food?
Yes, I think that kids tend to sort of be taught a lot of this in school, but being able to actually ask questions to a chef and be able to cook with produce which they know is one, that is going to be tasty because they've tasted it, but two, open their eyes to food that they may not have tried before. I think that I think a lot of kids say they don't want to try stuff because they don't like the way it looks, but the way that we produce our sessions, we encourage the kids to try, and I think it really does open their eyes. It's very easy, I think, currently to be able to make easier choices, say fast food choices or that type of thing, and it's obviously giving people the ability to make the right choices, but also the skills to be able to do it. So I think it's something that